Yeah, they love it. The Maritime Museum is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they love the submarine. But I just go and buy tickets to go. We haven't made it a thing.
Oh no, what they do is they will take you sailing. So not touring, sailing. And
Gotta do.
being said that if you're interested, the next time that they are going out to sea, they invite VIPs. They invite your kids.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. They would love it.
Well, listen, I'm trolling for a third boat. I figure your kids get hooked. That's how I got stuck. My kids loved it, and so did I. But I'll ask. If you don't mind, I'll tell them to make sure he invites you.
That'd be great. All right, Mr. Clerk, are we ready to go?
Mr. Chair, we are ready to go.
All right. Good morning. I will now call the Housing Authority meeting of April 7th, 2021 to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Just had a mask tangle there. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all 5 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage. I'll remind members of the public that have requested to speak to wait to dial into the meeting until the item is called. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson?
Here.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Here.
Supervisor Desmond?
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher here.
And for the Housing Authority, Tenant Commissioner Sandra Marsh? Commissioner Marsh, if you can unmute.
Here.
Great. And for the Housing Authority, Tenant Commissioner Francisco Peñalosa.
Yeah. Here.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we have a quorum. We're going to move forward with item 1 on the Housing Authority agenda. Notice public hearing, adopt a resolution of the Housing Authority of the County of San Diego Board of Commissioners approving the annual plan. I will ask the clerk if we have a presentation on this item or any staff comments they would like to make.
We will pass that.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're gonna see if there's a presentation, and then we'll see if we have any public
Oh.
speakers, and then we'll come back for board discussion. We'll get right to you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Chair. No presentation on this item.
All right. Are there any requests to speak?
There are no requests to speak on this item, Chair Fletcher. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion, Commissioner Marsh? Would you like to make a motion to approve this item?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you for that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner Sandra Marsh, seconded by Commissioner Nora Vargas to approve agenda item 1. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
None.
None.
All right. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond?
Aye.
And Tenant Commissioner Marsh?
Aye.
Tenant Commissioner Peñalosa?
Here I am.
And Vice Commissioner Vargas?
Yes.
And Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all commissioners being present and voting aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Marsh and Commissioner Peñalosa. We will now adjourn the Housing Authority and call the regular meeting of the April 7, 2021 County Board of Supervisors to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Here.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye. Here.
Supervisor Desmond?
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas here.
And Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher here. All right, we have a quorum. Closed session has been moved to after today's meeting, so there is no closed session report to read out today. We will move directly into non-agendized public comment, an opportunity for the public to comment on items that are within our jurisdiction, but are not on the agenda today. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. Reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public that are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will get double the allotted time to allow for interpretation. I will ask the clerk if we have any non-agendized public comment at this time.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 12 requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda today. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on during non-agenda public communication, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. As a reminder for the callers, if you requested to speak on a specific agenda item, please hang up and call back when the board begins discussion of that item. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 2 minutes to address the board. You will hear the sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV and live video stream before they begin speaking. Aaron, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 1444. 1444.
Hello, good morning. My name is Chris Wade. I'm a father of 4 and a mentor for young men ages 12 to 18. I'm concerned with the Board of Supervisors looking to permit marijuana businesses in the county. As we all know, there's a careful balance that needs to take place to make sure that our teens are protected from drug addiction. Marijuana products contain enormous amounts of THC that completely rewire developing brains and can create irreversible cognitive changes and potentially lead to years of further addiction. According to the February 2021 Journal of Studies on Alcohol and Drugs, analyzed data from over 3 million 7th, 9th, and 11th graders who participated in the California Healthy Kids Survey. And it noted there were significant increases in the prevalence of lifetime and past 30-day marijuana use among nearly all demographic groups. We can't lose more of our young people to addictive products like marijuana. I respectfully request that the Board of Supervisors put our young people's well-being first before promoting the marijuana industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8569. 8569.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good. Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. My name is Frank Landis, and I'm the Conservation Chair for the San Diego chapter of the California Native Plant Society. Today I have something to ask, but I'm not quite sure how to phrase it. You see, I recently commented on a project designed by county planners. They were having trouble making it sustainable, so first they lined up a single-lane parking lot with trees for carbon sequestration. That wasn't sufficient, so they then added solar carports on top of the single line of parking spaces. This line runs north to south. In the configuration they proposed, the solar panels will shade the trees until the trees get bigger. Then the trees will shade the solar panels. This is the problem I have: how to get county planners to realize that trees and solar panels cannot share the same patch of sunlight and do their jobs. Apparently, a number of planners don't realize that solar panels do best when they get unobstructed sunlight from the south or west, and that east-facing solar panels are unproductive due to morning clouds. Some of them may not even notice that where south is on maps, given the solar panels they approve for projects. It sounds like a silly matter, except that it isn't. If we want the county to run on sustainable electricity, we're going to need a lot more solar power. Electric cars especially take huge amounts of electricity. I have 18 solar panels on my roof, which collectively are sufficient to charge my car once per week. Most roofs in San Diego can't do this, and we bought this home primarily because it had a roof that could accommodate such an array. San Diego cannot afford to keep being that stupid about designing solar arrays, and we really don't have enough land in the unincorporated county to make up for all the badly designed roofs that have been permeated over the years. So that's my ask. Please have planning staff in all departments educated about how to properly site both solar arrays and trees. It's not hard. You don't need to be an engineer to know which direction south is and to tell from maps when things can shade solar panels and vice versa. But your planners apparently need to be encouraged and helped to do it properly. Can you do this, please? Thank you for taking my request.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6941. 6941.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Chrissy Lowe. I'm a parent to middle school and high school aged kids. You can imagine how difficult this year has been, as I have had 4 teenage boys home doing online school. Thankfully, my boys have navigated through this time and are now moving forward with life. But sadly, that's not the case for many. I've come to realize personally the real negative effects marijuana use can have on teens as well as adults. A couple weeks ago, we learned that a middle school teacher at my son's school had been heavily using marijuana during the closure to combat anxiety and depression. Within a few short months, this beloved and highly respected teacher experienced a psychotic break, including schizophrenic episodes, casing a dangerous situation for other staff at the school. He was let go from his teaching position and is now seeking help in a mental health institution. As a parent, this is deeply concerning as the county continues to move forward with your marijuana ordinance. The message you're sending to youth and adults is that marijuana is safe and accepted as a remedy to health issues. This is not the case at all, and people are suffering. This beloved teacher is suffering, and now all the students and staff at our school are also suffering. There is absolutely no place for more dispensaries in our county. I would greatly appreciate the county supervisors to speak out to teens and adults raising concerns and declare that marijuana is detrimental to public health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is 5310. 5310.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Logan, 35-year San Diego County resident. I recently read in the newspaper that one of the coastal cities in Supervisor Lawson Reamer's district is considering their apartment and condo complexes, also known as multi-unit housing, to be a smoke-free and vape-free living experience for tenants. We know that ethnic minorities and economically disadvantaged people more often live in multi-unit housing. We recognize that health disparities, negative health outcomes, shortened lifespan, and more chronic health problems occur for them. This could be changed by creating a smoke-free and vape-free living experience. I think this policy needs the Board of Supervisors' serious consideration, especially since we know that marijuana smoke and vape is also as dangerous and now as pervasive as tobacco smoke and vape. This increase in more exposure to secondhand marijuana smoke and vape added to tobacco secondhand smoke and vapor will be harmful for children and youth. As the Board of Supervisors considers enabling marijuana businesses and normalizing the use of pot, resulting in the increase of smoking and vaping behavior, we should ask ourselves, will the health of our citizens improve or suffer because of it? Will children have a better living experience or a more smoky and unhealthy one? Now may be the time to require marijuana and tobacco-free living in multi-unit housing, as 120 cities and counties in California already have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7750. 7750.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Falstich, and I am a middle school teacher. I strongly oppose permitting the marijuana industry to grow in our unincorporated areas of the county. Its influence is already affecting our children in the cities that allow it. It is our responsibility as healthy adults to create a healthy environment for ourselves and for our children. My students are the future of our city, and we cannot have them growing up surrounded by marijuana stores and other businesses, like marijuana lounges where you can smoke vape and then drive. What sort of message is that? I teach them every day about making the right choice and the negative effects of drugs. How will they truly learn that if they leave school and see a pot shop on their way home? If our county allows the development of marijuana businesses to grow, then the number of teens using it will also grow. The more pot shops our county has, the more normal marijuana becomes, and there is nothing normal about it. And it's not just teens who will be affected. Our county's small children cannot grow up seeing these pot shops. In today's society, a 5-year-old is capable of using a computer and joining a Zoom call to see their teacher. If 5-year-olds can do that, they can definitely Google the word pot. The dangers of the world are quite literally at our fingertips. While we cannot control what our children see on the internet, we can control what our children see in our community. Please stop marijuana businesses from opening in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4592. 4592.
Good morning, board. My name is Kathleen Lippett. As a volunteer and educator, I find it demoralizing that so many public electeds are continuing to ignore the needs and priorities of those they were elected to serve. The cavalier decision to impose this marijuana plan in the unincorporated areas is cynical and self-serving. Numerous times, the board has indicated their intention to follow science, but it is only possible to follow science if you pay attention to the science. If the designer of this ordinance and those who chose to support it had done so, they would have learned that there are mountains of evidence of the harm this industry has perpetrated and continues to do so, especially on children and young adults. The parents who lose their children to marijuana abuse, addiction, academic failure, mental illness, or who die in marijuana-related crashes or commit suicide will never forgive you for this short-sighted and obviously marijuana industry influenced decision to grow a commercial marijuana industry. The public continues to ask for a cost-benefit analysis, and they continue to be ignored. But there is silence on your part on the unanticipated associated social, public health, and safety costs that will quickly erode tax revenues. All the promises the marijuana industry has made to the public officials and to the public have never been kept. They were never intended to be kept. The priorities and concerns of your authentic community voices bear no resemblance to this decision to carry the water for a commercial marijuana industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5555. 5555.
Good morning. This is Tyler McCormick. I'm currently a sophomore in high school, and I'm here because I think it's important to talk about the way that marijuana is affecting teenagers. Did you know that teens who vape pot are twice as likely to report that they wheeze when they breathe compared to teens who don't vape or only smoke tobacco? Unfortunately, many teens are unaware of the dangers when they first start. The federal government recently did a survey of 15,000 teenagers, and they discovered that teens who vaped marijuana were more likely to report all 5 respiratory symptoms on their list. The teens in the survey reported that wheezing disrupted their sleep, interfered with their ability to exercise or speak, and caused a dry cough. If you're going to allow marijuana businesses to open in the county, you should also look at the effect that it will have on teenagers and young adults. Marijuana and vape companies target us with advertising and trendy products while ignoring the effect that it has on our health. They'll make millions of dollars while we suffer the consequences. I hope you put health ahead of corporate profits. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7234. 7234.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Terry Skelly. I work in the unincorporated area of District 3, and I'm a parent of 3 young adult sons who are encouraging to get a good education and jobs in these confusing times. I wonder if you really understand the consequences of having marijuana storefronts in town with its pervasive signage and advertising. This visibility and promotion threatens, sabotages, and diverts the lives of young people who may well decide that an acceptable form of relaxation is getting high. I really do not feel it's the supervisor's job to enable marijuana storefronts in any way. The promise that unpermitted retail markets would go away if the county established a permitting scheme is a ridiculous industry assertion that is absolutely not supported by any data. In fact, the recent Forbes magazine, an article written by a longtime marijuana proponent stated, and I quote, "By most estimates, California's illicit cannabis marketplace is anywhere from 2 to 3 times as big as the legal market. It's highly likely no amount of enforcement can ever make the illicit market go away forever, especially since many of these legacy growers, a euphemism for a long-term unpermitted pot businessman, are people of color, and law enforcement has no stomach for that type of prosecution. I am reminded of the famous medical doctrine, first do no harm, which is a reminder that we need high quality research to help us better understand the balance of risks and benefits. So I ask, have we really collected the data that supports marijuana storefronts? I would suggest that the answer is probably no. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2965. 2965.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is KB Strange. I've called in today because as a pharmacist, I want to make sure that we understand what we are talking about when we talk about marijuana products being sold from storefronts. These are not the weed that from even 10 years ago, which is a plant whose flowers or buds were smoked. Today's marijuana products are manufactured by reduction of the THC through utilization of alcohol, butane, CO2, or ethanol to separate cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. The goal of the process is to produce a concentrated and more potent marijuana product. On a side note, the contamination of marijuana products can occur at any point along the reduction process or intensified if it already exists from the growing process. For example, Eagle 20 is a fungicide used on marijuana plants. It contains myclobutanil, which when heated turns into hydrogen cyanide, a lethal gas. The effects of this gas are even more pronounced when stuck into a vape pen for heating, which is the preferred method of consumption by teens. So back to these high potency marijuana products. The use of this marijuana on steroids, if you will, can produce a dead numbness or scary psychotic paranoia or psychotic breaks, especially with young users or new users. Frequent users develop tolerance and eventually addiction. A permanent addict customer base is a perfect prescription for business and profits. I must ask, how can this county embark on enabling more drugs to be grown, more drugs to be manufactured, and thus more drugs consumed? It seems to contradict all of the Live Well goals. Thanks for listening, and I hope you will do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7159. 7159.
Good morning, Supervisors. Thank you. My name is Mark Wilcox. I am here this morning because I wanted to share my concerns regarding the misconceptions regarding marijuana. Recently, an editorial in the Colorado Springs Gazette by the original author behind Colorado's Prop 64, Robert Corey, wrote that the current reality I was too naive to anticipate 10 years ago is that the commercialized, for-profit, elitist, government-protected, privileged, monopolistic industry that perpetuates itself and its obscene profits would be detrimental to the public good and the planet Earth. The inmates are running Colorado's marijuana asylum. Amendment 64 created a corporate lobby that punches far above its weight. To demonstrate this industry's unjustified political clout, even during a pandemic, the governor and the Denver mayor deemed marijuana business essential, while schools, churches, gyms, and most other non-big box stores were shut. So it was not essential to educate our children, our future, but it was essential to maintain those children's access to high-potency corporate marijuana. And access it, they surely do. This industry genetically modifies plants at a level that would make Monsanto blush, fouls our planet with chemicals and wasteful growing systems, harms the poor and children, is dominated by the wealthy and privileged, and proclaims its brilliance to a nauseating degree.
Thank you,
Corporate
sir.
marijuana is...
Thank you, sir. Your time is up, but thank you very much. And finally, 8480, if you would like to address the board on a matter that's not on today's agenda, please press *6 now.
Scott Chipman, 45-year county resident and San Diegans for Safe Neighborhoods. Each month, more and more medical associations, doctors, and researchers are warning against the use, normalization, and legalization of marijuana. In October, 5 different medical associations sent a combined warning to several East Coast states not to legalize marijuana based on the health harms they were seeing. Now a new organization of doctors has formed, the International Academy on the Science and Impact of Cannabis, IASIC. IASIC1.org is the website. It counters the pervasive misperception of the safety of marijuana by international experts who provide science, data, and clinical expertise. This nonpartisan and non-political group is developed, organized, and guided by doctors. They hope science guides policies that protect the public and create informed decision-making. This group is led by 4 doctors and about 20 physician advisors, including our own Dr. Ronit Lev of Scripps Emergency Medicine. Dr. Lev has been a strong opponent of normalization of marijuana, and she has seen firsthand the negative impacts of the drug and spent nearly 2 years as the first medical officer at the Office of National Drug Control Policy, ONDCP. AISIC has collected an extensive library of reports and studies on the harms of marijuana related to the topics of brain development, psychosis, depression, suicide, pain, and opioids, addiction, withdrawal, ER visits, auto collisions, hyperemesis syndrome, neonatal exposure, drug interactions, contaminants, cardiovascular health, pulmonary health, and cancer, all harmful. Before making policy decisions, this board, whose priority 1 is public health, should study the potential impacts of your decisions. Please do your jobs, focus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes non-agenda public communications this morning, Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who called in today. We appreciate it. Next on our agenda is approval of the minute statements of proceedings for the meeting of Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Happy to make a motion.
All right, we have a
I'll
motion
second.
by Supervisor Lawson-Remer, second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson? Supervisor Anderson? Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We'll now proceed with the formation of the consent calendar. Let me ask Mr. Clerk if there are any items that the public wishes to be pulled for discussion.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Item 1 has been pulled by the public. Item 5 has been pulled by the public. And item 10 has been pulled by the public. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda may be placed in the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
All right, let me go to my colleagues and ask if they have any items they would like to pull or comments they wish to make. We'll start with Supervisor Anderson. We will come back to Supervisor Anderson. We'll go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
No items to pull. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vargas.
So just to clarify, 1 through 4.
No, only 1 and 5
Got
were
it.
pulled by the public.
Okay, thank you. I'm fine.
And item 10.
And item 10. Give me 1 second, Mr. Clerk. Let's give Supervisor Anderson a second. Let's go to Supervisor Desmond.
I'm sorry. Okay. Technical difficulty morning here.
Yeah.
I don't have any other items to pull. I'll make a motion to approve the balance. I do have a question though, I guess on the fee ones. Are those, which number are the fee ones?
Those are 2, 3, and 4. I'd probably suggest we pull those items because we've got some decisions we got to make on those.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and pull item 2, 3, and 4
Perfect.
for
Thank you,
discussion.
Supervisor. Yep.
And then a motion for the balance, pulling, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the public, and then 5 and 10.
That's
But, okay, thank you. Item 6, this is the formation of the advisory committee for the Valley Center new park system. I'm happy to announce that this is the final step in accepting Valley Center parks into the county park system. Valley Center Parks Board, LAFCO Commission, the Board of Supervisors have approved the transfer of dollars that's been dedicated to improve the existing parks. This action will form an advisory committee for the Valley Center service area. I have to adjust the motion on this one because of the we have to publish a notice for the appointment vacancies, which were part of this today. So I want to amend the motion slightly to approve recommendations 1 through 5 of item 6 and direct the clerk to publish a notice for the appointment vacancies in the I guess that's in number 6 of the motion. As I've committed in the past, my intention is to appoint the current Valley Center Parks Board members who are willing to serve in the advisory committee, which will be forthcoming. So is that clear enough for the clerk for that amendment?
Yes, Supervisor Desmond, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I have a quick comment on item 9. This is to adopt a resolution of a list of projects approved to be funded by Senate Bill 1 for the fiscal year 2021. These are mostly road improvement projects. I want to thank the staff and all the comments that have come in about our county roads. My one area of concern is our road pavement concrete index. The PCI rating has seemed to have stalled over the last couple of years. Previous boards have put the set direction to keep our roads at an average PCI of 70. That's kind of the sweet spot to keep the roads in good condition. If they slip below 70, then it ends up costing us more in the long run to maintain and keep them up. So if we don't adequately maintain our roads now, fixing them in the future will just cost more. I recognize that our PCI has stagnated somewhere in the 60s, and I'd like to see that the efforts continue to improve that, bring that up to save us money in maintaining our roads. So that is all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. Let's go to Supervisor Anderson.
I have nothing, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by myself, to approve the consent calendar. I'll ask the clerk just to confirm the items for our discussion today will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. It's my intent we'll take item 5 first and then work through the rest in agenda order. But if we'll have the clerk confirm those are the items for today and then call the roll on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yes, that confirms the items that we have pulled for discussion this morning. With that, Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
The motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to take up first agenda item 5, framework for our future cooperative approach to tribal governments and fee to trust proposals. This is a board letter has been brought forward by Supervisors Desmond and Vice Chair Vargas. If the public wishes to speak on this item, please call in now. We will first go to Vice Chair Vargas for some initial comments.
Thank you, Chair. With over 19 Native American reservations within San Diego County, we have the more tribal governments than any other county in the nation. Their contributions to the county have been insurmountable. Our tribal communities have been fighting for sovereignty for hundreds of years. And in partnership with several tribal governments, thousands of county workers have been employed, casinos and commercial centers have been developed, and the tribal governments are a valued part of the San Diego community and economy. With our rich Native American history, it is vital for our county to establish government relations with each local Native American tribal government to ensure delivery of services and improve quality of life for its residents and the communities. However, in the last couple of hours, I received community concerns that I would like to further address before moving forward with this letter. With that in mind, I want to emphasize that I'm fully committed to the intent of the letter. However, I would like to ask for continuance of this board letter to the May meeting in order to work out details and concerns that were brought up to me. And so I would like to make a motion to continue this board letter, Chair.
All right. We have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas to continue the item. We'll go to Supervisor Desmond for some introductory comments.
Well, it's kind of news to me. I want to thank Supervisor Vargas for joining me in introducing this item. And as she stated, that San Diego has more tribal governments than any other county in the nation. And collectively, they've created more than 10,000 jobs, which has resulted in about a $1 billion a year industry. For too long, I think the county has had a blanket opposition, regardless of merit, to any growth by the tribal governments. And what we're doing today is to remove that blanket opposition, just that no right out of the gate. While this proposal removes that blanket opposition, it doesn't give blanket approval to anything. I mean, the tribes still have to go through all the permitting processes and things like that. They have to work with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They have to do all the other things. All this does is removes the blanket no to everything. You know, the fee to trust applications and the proposed tribal government projects will be evaluated for all impacts on a case-by-case basis instead of an upfront automatic no. You know, I kind of put this in the context of, I used to be, you know, had a home, had a homeowners association. If you wanted to change anything, you had to get 3 neighbors to, you know, sign off and say, yeah, the color's okay, or whatever it is you're trying to do. You know, there's always that one neighbor that's just no on everything. So that's what we are essentially to the tribes. There's just a blanket no. We're not even hearing what they want to do or the merits of it at all. The no is just right out front. So, you know, our board letter actually promotes inclusivity. It'll establish new procedures for county staff and the tribes to work collaboratively on proposed tribal government expansions. It also creates a tribal government liaison position to interface between the tribes and the county. The new position will be an enterprise-wide, not just in land use, and responsible for building relationships between each tribal government and the county. And it's time that we recognize our tribal governments as equals and the good neighbors that they are. I would like to, I know there's tribal government folks or chairpersons who have called in, and I'd like to hear their comments before we vote or make an action on the motion.
Of course, Supervisor Desmond. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas to continue this item. I'll second that, but let's go to our public speakers and then we'll return to board members for comments. I'll ask the clerk to call forward the speakers on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Just to clarify for the record, is that a continuance to a date certain of the next board meeting on May 5th?
Ask the maker of the motion to clarify.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, with that, we have 5 requests to speak on this item. We also received 1 e-comment. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of your phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You'll hear the sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Aaron, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 0552. 0552. Please press *6 to unmute your line.
Hi, good morning, Chair Fletcher and Board of Supervisors. My name is Erica Pinto. I'm the chairwoman of the Hamul Indian Village of California, and I am here to strongly support and urge the County Board of Supervisors to continue to withdraw an outdated, long-standing policy that does nothing but discriminate against the tribes. As Supervisor Vargas and Supervisor Desmond expressed, San Diego County is home to more than 18 tribes, more than any other county in the nation. So I'm here to strongly urge and support the rescission of this outdated policy and to promote inclusivity, collaboration. As was mentioned earlier, this new direction is something that's beneficial to the entire county of San Diego. Just a removal of a blanket policy
I thought today would be a no-brainer for all of us. And I strongly urge and encourage the county to please move forward with this today. Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2860. 2860.
Good morning, Chairman Fletcher and the Board of Supervisors. My name is Dr. Jolie Proudfit. I am the Chair of American Indian Studies and the Director of the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center at California State University, San Marcos. I've been a professor for 26 years in the California state system and have witnessed the state's budgets up and downs and often abysmal investment in education. I speak in complete support of Supervisors Desmond and Vargas' proposal to repeal previously approved resolutions stifling tribal growth. Tribal growth is good for education. Tribal growth is good for our campuses. The tribal nations of this county have been vital partners to supporting the education of our county's residents and students. The tribes of San Diego have invested time and resources in supporting our center's programs and research agendas that serve all of the state's residents. With the support of our tribes and our tribal partners, we have provided statewide policy report cards on education equity and policy initiatives. With the support of tribal nations, we have supported providing Public Law 280 certificates for first responders for free or for minimal cost. More than 80% of our graduates stay and work in our county and are skilled in working with and among our tribes and their ancillary businesses because of the unique training and programs they are offered at our center and at our university because of tribes' investment. The tribes of California and of this county's investment support our center, our campus, and has allowed us to grow to be the premier campus of choice for Native American students. We have the largest American Indian student population per capita of any campus in the state as a direct result of this collaborative partnership with the tribal nations of San Diego County. I also want to acknowledge the tribes of San Diego County's investment in education, arts, culture, health, and their stewardship of the land. Their support and investment in our county's future is evident, and we support Supervisor Desmond and Vargas's proposal and support tribal sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3694. 3694.
Good morning. This is Tishmal Turner, Vice Chair of the Rincon Band of Luiseño Indians. Thank you, Supervisors, for hearing this topic today. It is important that we need to stop this blanket opposition in Fee Trust land. Tribal members want to be able to return to their families and be just like everyone else in the county. Tribes have contributed generously to all San Diego County residents. I'm a resident of Encinitas, and our tribal members live in every district throughout San Diego County. When is it our turn to be treated equally as other county residents? Please support this formation of government-to-government relationships today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5557. 5557. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Five, 5557. If not, we'll move on and come back to you. Our next speaker is 4550. 4550.
Good morning. This is Chairman Bo Mazzetti from Rincon Reservation. Chairman Fletcher, I'd like to thank you and the board to finally address this racist policy. There's no other way to put it. I'll give you an example. We've purchased some land within our reservation boundaries, little parcels, 5-acre parcels that the county has determined and in writing says that the tribe has complete regulatory authority over. Yet, when we go to put this land into trust status, the county opposes it. It makes no sense at all. This has been a racist policy from the time it was implemented. This policy we're talking about today and implementing deals not with gaming. This is a non-gaming request that tribes make for non-gaming purposes. I want to give you an example. You know, the no businesses in San Diego County on a continual annual basis contribute back to the San Diego County taxpayers more than the tribes in San Diego County. I'll give you an example. We pay about $4.5 million for a fire department that services the entire region. We have mutual aid agreements, cost the taxpayers not one penny. We totally support 2 deputy sheriffs at almost $600,000 a year cost to the tribe. They can go when they're called upon, they can go anywhere they need or needed within the county. Again, that's some of the other stuff we're doing. We've implemented an ambulance service. Again, no cost to the taxpayers. So I know a lot of the discussion is, okay, when land goes into trust, one, we lose the taxes. I want to make sure that we understand when the land that a tribe has to buy, this is not free. When a tribe buys a piece of land, it has to be clear and have a clean title. Then a tribe can petition the United States government to make that part of the reservation. That process is a fee to trust process. In some cases, it's taken 12 years to put a parcel of land into trust. When the land goes into trust status, the title is in the name of the United States government for the beneficial use of that tribe. That's the way the process works. When that happens, federal impact aid money is made available to the school districts for the loss of that school revenue. So they do not lose that. What is lost is the property tax to the county. However, when you take all of the
Thank you, sir.
contributions the tribe provide, it far exceeds what that parcel of land would have ever generated in taxes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker is 5557. 5557. Please press *6 to unmute your line at this time. Again, this is the last call for 5557.
Miriam, Onum, Nathan Chairman Tmet Aguilar Yaka, Nunata, P. Ki Cham Kuish, Pyongam guys, Rushun Pilik, Lovit, Omet, Tetila, Pito Cham Pila, Mik, P. Miet, Pito Hish, Cham Lobi, Chamolo P. Miet, Omum, Ayanani, Ayanum, Jonum P. Kiam, Evi, Galvan, Amami, Ayan, Evium, Eastvium, Shashum, Pilik Belov, Gal Omet. Thank you, Chairman Fletcher, Supervisor Vargas, and Supervisor Desmond. I'm Chairman Aguilar, and just like the words I spoke to you, I'm sure you didn't understand them. And I think for a long time, that's been the problem between our local communities and our tribes. I think today is a day that we start closing that gap, because it's really something, as we've heard previously stated, that it is our misunderstanding, misnomers, miseducation. And in 2021, we're smarter and we're better than this. And I commend you. I look forward to working with you and collaborating, and one day you understanding our words, just like how we've had to grow to understand yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you to all the callers who called in on this item. We have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas to continue this item to the May 5th meeting, seconded by myself. Are there any board member comments or discussions?
Yes. Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Desmond.
I think we should move forward on this today. This has waited too long. It doesn't change any process. It doesn't change anything. We can still oppose projects that we don't like or we don't want or we don't think are worthy. It just takes away the blanket upfront no. It doesn't, you know, I got one of the things I'd like to ask staff here, I don't know if they can answer it or not because I didn't give them a heads up. I got an email from somebody said this is a card room killer. This really doesn't allow tribes to go and just buy a piece of land and plunk down a new casino. They can't just buy land and go and plunk down a new card room anywhere. This doesn't allow for that. All it is removing the blanket no to everything that we have this relationship with the tribe, and I think it's terrible. You know, I think we haven't done this if we did this to any other group of people and just said, you know, don't even come to us with any changes that you want, or just and the upfront answer is no. This is, I don't know, I'm having problems with this, but I guess Supervisor Vargas, I appreciate and respect your opinion on this. Is there something you could ask for clarification that might be able to get us to move forward today on anything? Is that possible to do so that we can perhaps do the right thing today?
No, I understand your question, Supervisor Desmond, and I really, you know, I didn't. My style would have been to have a lot of these conversations sooner. Some of these issues came up last minute. Unfortunately, we were in a board meeting yesterday until 11:30 in the evening. Otherwise, I would have made time to address some of these concerns. So I just want to give my constituents a little bit of time to have the conversation. As I stated in my comments, I fully support the intent of this letter. I just want to make sure that I address some of these concerns and happy to come back on May 5th and move forward.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion for continuance. I certainly stand with our tribal brothers and sisters. I think it's really vital that we do a better job of getting to yes and being supportive. But there's certainly a lot of issues that remain. You know, we need more time to think things through and address some of those questions. So I would just wanted to second the motion for continuance.
All right, thank you. We have a second, but we will take your second in spirit.
Well,
you're the spirit seconder.
Well, it's a tribal issue, so.
There you go. Supervisor Desmond.
Yeah, so I guess we should, I can count the votes. I can see where this is going. I think this is a slap in the face to our tribal nations that we aren't removing this barrier between us. Hopefully we'll get it done on May 5th. But I don't know, this is embarrassing, I think, with our neighbors. And I wish we could kind of work this out, just like, you know, last night when somebody said there wasn't enough time, and this has been out there since last Wednesday, or I'm sorry, Thursday night. So it wasn't, I know yesterday's meeting was long, but we had time to speak with the tribes several times, and I'm just sad the way this is going. So I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you. We have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by myself, to continue this item to our May 5th meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
No.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes with Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, let's go to agenda item number 1. This is a notice public hearing related to housing, safety, environmental justice element. We're going to have a number of decisions we're going to have to kind of consider and work through. I know staff has a very thorough presentation, and I look forward to that presentation, and then we'll have a pretty robust discussion on this item. If there's members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please call in now. And we will go to public comment after we get the staff presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Rami will lead our presentation on this item. Good morning, Chair Fletcher. I'm Rami Telly. With me today is Rob Eford and Tara Lieberman. We will be presenting on the status of the safety element update and the new environmental justice element, and reporting back on our approach to accommodate the unincorporated area's regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA. There are 6 elements in the county's general plan. Staff is updating 2 existing elements, housing and safety, and introducing a new element for environmental justice. The county's general plan has an overall capacity to accommodate approximately 58,000 new units. The housing element does not change that capacity. Rather, it demonstrates to the state that we have enough suitable land within the existing land uses and densities to accommodate the county's RHNA. The housing element is updated on an 8-year cycle. The safety and environmental justice elements are being prepared concurrently with the housing element according to state law, and to ensure that housing policy is developed with consideration to hazards, pollution, and historically underserved communities. At a workshop on February 10th, the Board of Supervisors provided direction on the approach to demonstrate capacity for RHNA, preliminary adaptation goals for inclusion in the safety element, and methodology on how to identify disadvantaged communities, which we'll refer to as environmental justice or EJ communities in this presentation. The board directed staff to continue with the scope and approach to the preliminary adaptation goals based upon a vulnerability assessment for inclusion in the safety element update. For the EJ element, the board directed staff to continue with the proposed EJ community identification methodology that relies on the state-recommended database, CalEnviroScreen 3.0, and Live Well criteria, and to continue with stakeholder outreach to develop additional criteria that may be used to identify more EJ communities in the unincorporated area. For the housing element, staff presented a draft site inventory approach that demonstrated the county has the capacity to accommodate the county's housing needs. The board directed staff to modify the approach to identify RHNA sites to see if we could add more criteria and still demonstrate capacity. Specifically, the board asked us to avoid sites in high and very high hazard zones and consider water availability, vehicle miles traveled, and access to transit or potential transit lines. The board directed staff to return with one option that achieves the board's intention to the greatest extent possible without requiring a change to the current zoning designations, and one that would. To comply with the board's direction on the housing element, staff used the draft site criteria presented in February as a baseline and added each criterion to develop the 2 options. Board direction is needed on the options for RHNA sites inventory to complete the housing element and update and satisfy state requirements. Once completed, final drafts of all 3 elements will be brought back to the board this summer for consideration and adoption. Before we go into more detail on the site inventory options for the housing element, we'll provide an update on our outreach efforts and progress on the safety and EJ elements.
Staff's public outreach approach for the update of the general plan elements included a process with over 40 separate engagements to date. The outreach strategy engaged a diverse set of stakeholders that spanned environmental interest groups, development industry interest groups, and community interest groups. Presentations were tailored to the requests of each group, with some focusing on one element while others provided an overview of all 3. In all cases, presentations were paired with open discussion periods. In addition to individual stakeholder groups, staff hosted public workshop webinars, provided draft documents for public review, submitted draft documents to state agencies for required reviews, and presented at community planning and sponsor group meetings. Staff also maintained project websites, provided project fact sheets, and administered a housing survey. To reach additional community members within EJ communities, especially those without internet access, staff mailed approximately 10,000 flyers on all 3 elements to both property owners and residents in EJ communities, and posted flyers in English, Spanish, and Arabic at community gathering points such as pharmacies, grocery stores, and coffee shops. Since the February board workshop, staff have continued to engage with the public and stakeholders on all 3 elements and have revised documents based on input received. Comments from stakeholders on the safety element update included themes such as restricting or prohibiting development in high fire hazard severity zones through downzoning, transfer of development rights, or other means. In terms of locating development outside of hazard areas, the proposed safety element includes policy language which seeks to minimize risk while not prohibiting development or density outright within hazard areas. Safety element policy language was reviewed and adjusted to consider this input while remaining internally consistent with the other general plan elements and policies. Second, expanding fuel management strategies. Fuel modification policy language in the safety element was updated, incorporating resource management and brush clearance plans as measures with fire protection plans to provide guidance for vegetation maintenance, especially along emergency access routes. And lastly, creating quantitative standards for safe evacuation of development. While standards for evacuation are typically contained in more near-term and incident-specific safety documents, like fire protection plans and emergency operations plans, additional evacuation policy language was added to the proposed safety element. Staff also included a consolidated evacuation policy reference table to highlight the breadth of evacuation policies within the document. Based on this input, and in response to state requirements for the update, the draft safety element includes updates to 14 existing policies and 27 new policies. We will now briefly review the new policies as they relate to evacuation, climate adaptation, hazard prevention, and data maintenance. Through working with state, local, and regional agencies, and given the public feedback received, staff have added new and updated policies to meet state requirements and to address concerns regarding evacuation. These policies span in specificity from including emergency access road analysis at the community planning level to coordinating regionally for emergency evacuation. These policies also include the addition of evacuation planning into existing community wildfire protection plans, as well as requiring development to provide additional access roads where feasible. The safety element's new climate adaptation goal of increasing resilience and protecting populations from anticipated effects of climate change and its 10 new supporting policies are intended to build upon the county's ongoing climate change efforts and focus on climate adaptation and resilience. These policies include requirements for future plan updates and individual project reviews, and utilize the goals identified in the vulnerability assessment, including protection of populations and assets especially vulnerable to climate change's effects. Other new policies include measures to mitigate threats from known hazards and help plan new and existing developments to meet current and future anticipated demands for infrastructure. And lastly, policies ensure county data sets include newer, more relevant information and mapping to support effective emergency response and hazard mitigation. Comments from stakeholders on the new EJ element included themes such as ensuring the element addresses concerns such as air pollution, traffic, unhealthy housing conditions, impacts from renewable energy projects, and access to healthy foods, active recreation facilities, and health facilities. The draft EJ element includes 18 goals and 96 policies that address these topics at both the EJ community and the unincorporated scales. While the policies were crafted using best practice research and peer jurisdiction reviews, staff expect to receive additional stakeholder input during the public review period, which is currently underway, that can be used to further refine and target the actions proposed in the goals and policies. Additionally, outreach will continue after the summer to further develop topics covered in the EJ element. Expanding identified communities in areas beyond Lakeside, Spring Valley, Valle de Oro, and Sweetwater. In addition to the public input received, at the February 10 board workshop, the board directed that staff continue engaging with stakeholders. The draft EJ element includes policy EJ11 that specifically states to engage with unincorporated residents and stakeholders to develop criteria to identify additional EJ communities. Beyond community outreach, staff will continue to evaluate additional data sources, such as the Healthy Places Index, used to identify EJ communities. Lastly, staff received many questions asking if EJ element goals and policies apply only to EJ communities, to unincorporated areas outside of EJ communities, or both. There was concern that remote areas of the unincorporated county have existing issues that will not be addressed, or that action would be taken to prevent pollution that defines EJ communities. The draft EJ element includes goals and policies that apply at both the EJ community and the unincorporated county scale. These policies for EJ communities focus largely on correcting or mitigating existing disparities in health issues, while the policies for all unincorporated areas seek to prevent additional or future health risks. All policies in the EJ element apply to EJ communities. For those that also apply to areas outside of EJ communities, the element includes a notation in the title of the policy. The goals and policies included in the draft EJ element contain actions to identify EJ communities, prioritizing funding to these communities to address their needs and collaborative partnerships, reduce pollution by protecting sensitive land uses, promoting equitable and healthy air quality, and by restoring surface water quality, distribute quality public services, infrastructure, and services, promote safe living conditions and affordable housing measures, support and improve the region's food system infrastructure and operations, and promote healthy, nutritional, and affordable foods, promote physical health and wellness through the healthy designs and multimodal development, make civic engagements increasingly accessible and culturally appropriate, and provide ongoing monitoring of these actions and promoting a regional data clearinghouse. For the safety and EJ element policy topics just reviewed, staff does not need board direction today to proceed with further refinement based on the public and state agency input. If the board would like to provide input today, it will be incorporated into the elements and re-presented when staff return later this summer for the board's consideration of the final elements.
Now we'll discuss the housing element update. The housing element provides designated land, policies, and programs to demonstrate that capacity exists for developing housing that meets the needs of the unincorporated area's residents at all income segments and life stages, including special needs populations such as homeless individuals, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. The Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, is the process by which housing need is first assessed by region and then allocated to local jurisdictions. The unincorporated area's share of the RHNA for the 6th housing element cycle is 6,700 units spread across state-defined, very low, low, moderate, and above moderate income categories. The county must prepare a site inventory that includes sites with development capacity to accommodate its RHNA allocation. If there are insufficient sites, rezoning is necessary to demonstrate increased densities. In addition, the state recommends providing an additional 20% buffer of lower income units to address situations where RHNA sites do not remain viable due to land use changes or if RHNA sites do not develop to their full capacity. For example, if a RHNA site develops 10 units when 24 units are allowed. If the county does not provide a buffer, then it may be required to conduct periodic updates of the site inventory to ensure there's no net loss of units. The county's RHNA accommodation was reduced 70% compared to the previous 5th housing element cycle. SANDAG's new methodology distributes housing units based on each jurisdiction's share of regional transit services and employment. The methodology furthers state law objectives that seek to promote infill development, improve the jobs-housing relationship, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and equitably distribute housing units. The site inventory must show that the county has enough sites with suitable residential land use and densities to accommodate its RHNA allocation. Density, or the number of units per acre, is used as a proxy for affordability. Densities to accommodate above moderate income sites include properties designated 7.3 dwelling units and below, which can accommodate single-family homes and duplexes. Moderate income sites include properties designated between 10 to 15 dwelling units per acre, which can accommodate smaller multifamily housing such as courtyard apartments, townhomes, or triplexes. And finally, lower income sites include properties designated between 20 to 30 dwelling units per acre, which can accommodate larger multifamily housing such as multi-story apartment complexes. On February 10, 2021, staff presented draft site criteria that could demonstrate adequate sites to meet its RHNA goals without the need for general plan amendments or rezoning. The draft site criteria considered sites with sufficient land use capacity and densities located in villages throughout the unincorporated area with access to transit and infrastructure, including water, sewer, and dry utilities such as cable, electric, internet, and natural gas. In accordance with state guidelines, it also excluded sites with steep slopes and environmentally sensitive areas. In February, the board directed staff to investigate a modified approach to creating the site inventory. The board directed staff to avoid sites located in very high fire hazard zones, avoid sites located in high fire hazard zones, analyze access to water, take into consideration vehicle miles traveled, and take into consideration access to transit or potential transit lines. These additional criteria go beyond what is required by the state to address specific unincorporated area considerations. The board further directed staff to return with 2 site inventory options to achieve the board's intentions. 1 inventory option that fulfills the approach and does not require rezoning, and 1 inventory option that includes rezoning. If a jurisdiction is unable to demonstrate that it has the capacity to accommodate the RHNA using existing land use densities and zoning, then a rezoning effort is required to show capacity. If directed by the board to pursue a housing element rezone, it would be subject to the California Department of Housing and Community Development requirements and oversight, and subject to a state-mandated 3-year timeline to return for adoption of the rezone. This includes compliance with Assembly Bill 686, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which requires that the county take action to overcome patterns of segregation, and sites identified to accommodate lower income RHNA cannot be concentrated in low resource areas, areas of segregation, or concentrations of poverty. The state has not yet released guidance on how AB 686 will be applied and have conditionally approved housing elements until they provide further direction. In addition to properties rezoned to accommodate lower income housing, these would also be subject to additional state mandates, including by right approval for any relisted or rezoned site that provides at least 20% affordable housing on site, and requiring a minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre. If the state does not approve the list of rezoned candidate sites, or the rezoning is not adopted within 3 years, then the county could be subject to penalties, including loss of eligibility for various grants and reduced discretion in permit processing of housing projects. To develop the site inventory options, staff identified available data sources and developed a map for each of the board-directed criteria as shown on this slide. Staff then layered the information from each map and found that with each added layer of criteria, the amount of land within the unincorporated area that is available to accommodate the RHNA decreased, the number of eligible sites decreased, and the need for rezoning land to higher residential densities increased. Staff's analysis showed that combining 3 of the board's additional criteria, water access, access to transit, and excluding areas in very high fire hazard zones, adequate sites for the housing element site inventory could be provided without rezoning. When layering the remaining 2 criteria directed by the board, excluding areas that are not VMT efficient and areas that are within high fire hazard zones, a rezone was needed. Staff developed 2 options in response to the board direction. The draft site criteria of locating sites within villages and without environmental constraints are now used as a baseline and are incorporated into the options for board consideration. Option 1 applies the following board-directed criteria to the site inventory, including sites with access to water and access to transit and located outside of very high fire hazard zones. All 3 of these criteria, in addition to the baseline criteria, can be accommodated without the need for a rezoning program. Under this option, a total of 48,000 acres within portions of 11 different community planning areas of the unincorporated county have access to potable water, access to transit, and are located outside of very high fire hazard zones. Within this area, there is capacity for approximately 8,816 units in the general plan's land use element that could be used to demonstrate compliance with the unincorporated area's RHNA allocation. This exceeds the minimum number of 6,700 RHNA units and required and provides a 31% buffer. Of the 64 relisted RHNA sites proposed under option 1, 11 are located outside of VMT efficient areas and have a total capacity of 54 units. If the Board of Supervisors were to direct staff to remove these sites from option 1, we could still demonstrate capacity for RENA without requiring a rezone. This slide shows a few of the sites included under option 1 in yellow. These sites are all within areas with access to water and transit and are not located in very high fire hazard areas. Option 2 includes 3 sub-options. Option 2A includes all of the criteria from option 1 and also avoids high fire hazard zones. The layered analysis shows that only 39,000 acres of land within the unincorporated area is available under this sub-option, and a total of 443 acres of land would need to be rezoned to higher residential densities ranging from 24 dwelling units to the acre to 7.3 dwelling units to the acre. Sub-option 2B includes all of the criteria from option 1, and instead of avoiding high fire hazard zones, it only includes areas that are VMT efficient. The layered analysis shows that only 24,000 acres of land within the unincorporated area is available under this sub-option, and a total of 465 acres of land would need to be rezoned to higher residential densities. Sub-option 2C includes all of the criteria from option 1 and also avoids high fire hazard zones and only includes areas that are VMT efficient. The layered analysis shows that only 22,000 acres of land within the unincorporated area is available under this sub-option, and a total of 498 acres of land would need to be rezoned to higher residential densities. These rezones would be focused primarily within the communities of North County Metro, Lakeside, Valle de Oro, Spring Valley, and County Islands, Lincoln Acres neighborhood. If directed by the board to pursue option 2, the county would be subject to a state-mandated 3-year timeline to prepare an analysis of each proposed rezone candidate site, complete an environmental impact report, conduct public outreach, and return to the board for adoption of the rezones. Rezoning areas would add additional capacity, but does not guarantee that the units are built. In addition, areas that do not satisfy the board-directed criteria would not be downzoned and could continue to develop. The state requires that the county provide a list of rezone candidate sites for review prior to the adoption of the housing element. Staff have developed a list of rezone candidate sites, which includes 13 sites located in 6 community planning areas. Rezone candidate sites were selected if they had existing village land use designations and adjacency to complementary uses and densities, services and amenities, including existing arena sites, parks, schools, libraries, commercial nodes or corridors, including shopping centers and grocery stores. Eligible areas that were environmentally or physically constrained were avoided. Additional opportunities for above moderate housing were also provided in areas with a higher percentage of existing affordable housing stock, such as Spring Valley. This is an initial list of sites and exceeds what is needed to satisfy the arena to provide flexibility and cushion if sites are removed due to market feasibility, infrastructure capacity limitations, potentially significant environmental impacts, access issues, and/or community concerns.
Staff conducted a comparative analysis of both site inventory options. Option 1 would provide the most flexibility for maintaining RENA sites located in unincorporated villages with access to transit, infrastructure, and utilities, and are adjacent to other higher density residential developments. Options 2A, B, and C would eliminate sites that may have potential for housing, such as those close to existing developments and having access to infrastructure and transit. Option 2 would increase the general plan's residential capacity to meet RENA. However, it's important to note that if a site does not meet the board-directed criteria and is removed from the site inventory, it is not downzoned and will not lose its development potential. The additional criteria merely affects which sites are counted to accommodate RENA. In addition, previously approved projects, including various adopted specific plans, would also be excluded from the housing element site inventory, even though these entitled projects can still develop according to their planned densities. This includes locations adjacent to the Buena Creek Sprinter Station and sites within OTI 250 specific plan. Under option 1, RENA sites for all income categories would be spread across 11 unincorporated communities. In option 2, A, B, and C, the amount of land available to accommodate RENA is significantly reduced and limited to those communities of North County Metro, Lakeside, Valle de Oro, Spring Valley, Sweetwater, and Lincoln Acres. Several of these communities are identified as underserved or environmental justice communities and include low-income areas disproportionately affected by the environmental pollution and other hazards that can adversely affect health. When rezoning land to accommodate RHNA, the county must consider large land areas such as entire blocks, corridors, or neighborhoods. This option would require large areas within the small subset of the unincorporated area to be rezoned to higher densities of 20 and 24 dwelling units per acre, and could add to issues in already underserved communities. This could also create fair housing issues because those communities already host the majority of the county's existing housing affordability stock. A housing element rezone would not downzone properties located outside of the eligible areas. For example, a property within a high fire area would still be able to develop. In addition, rezoning under the RHNA process would provide additional housing without complementary uses, such as commercial or recreational uses within the impacted community planning area. Outside of the RHNA process, a separate general plan land use amendment or focused general plan update could rezone areas to provide both housing and other complementary uses to create complete, balanced communities, and would not be tied to the state timeline, oversight, or subject to potential penalties. The two options were presented at stakeholder outreach meetings, focus group discussions, webinars, and at community planning group and sponsor group meetings. At the development industry focus group meeting, comments were provided that option 1 provides more flexibility and housing opportunities. Under option 2, rezoning properties can raise community concerns and the units may not be realized. At the environmental focus group meeting, comments were provided that VMT is an important consideration for locating housing and that equity implications of option 2 are of concern. At the 3 community-based focus group meetings, as well as community planning and sponsor group meetings, we heard from several members of the public that the county needs to provide a more holistic and balanced rezoning approach that should not just provide residential opportunities, but also include commercial and other complementary uses and improvements, such as circulation and mobility improvements. The Spring Valley Community Planning Group voted to support option 1 over option 2 due to the negative impacts on their community and emergency services. They stated that option 2 places a disproportionate burden on the community in relation to the rest of the county, with 61% of the rezoning occurring in Spring Valley. Additional comments were received regarding impacts of rezoning and that a more equitable approach is needed. If option 1, without a rezone, is directed by the board, there will be no change in the net general fund. If option 2 is directed by the board, $785,000 in general fund balance is requested for the development of a rezoning program after adoption of the housing element. These additional funds are necessary to perform a detailed site analysis of each RHNA candidate site, prepare an environmental impact report, conduct public outreach, coordinate with the state, and return to the board for adoption. There are additional fiscal considerations related to other housing element implementation plan components, which will be finalized this spring. The housing element implementation plan, along with the additional fiscal considerations, will be presented in the summer of 2021. In summary, staff is requesting the board direct staff to pursue either the baseline approach of identifying RHNA sites or option 1, which includes 3 of the 5 board-directed criteria without the need for a rezone, or option 2, one of the sub-options of option 2 that considers the remaining board criteria and requires a rezone and additional environmental review. Following this workshop, we will incorporate the selected site inventory options into the draft element and continue to coordinate with the state to complete its review. Following the conclusion of the public review periods for each element, staff will incorporate additional public feedback and address agency comments in the draft elements and present the final draft element to the to the Planning Commission in May and return to the board for an adoption hearing in the summer of 2021. If directed to pursue option 2, staff would initiate the 3-year rezoning effort following housing element adoption. This concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for that great walkthrough and presentation. And, we're going to go to public comments and then come back for board discussion. And, look, this is an important and somewhat challenging issue. Our RENA numbers were cut, I believe, by about 70% decline in what we're expected to come through in the general plan. But under state law, we do have to show that we can actually meet those RENA numbers as low as they now are. And I think one of the dilemmas we're faced with is if we try to put all of the housing in all of the criteria that's been asked to be considered, I think we are going to run into AB 686 issues and challenges surrounding that, plus have significant delays. And additionally, there's also legislation, AB 215 moving forward, which I think is going to put some more teeth behind the requirements on local governments to meet their RENA numbers. And so I think coming up with a achievable, actionable plan that allows us to demonstrate we can meet our RENA numbers is an important thing that we've got to figure out as a board, how we want to do that and which pathway we want to go moving forward on this. So let's go to our public speakers, and then we'll come back for board discussion. I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments and questions and a good engagement on us picking a path forward to submit this report to the state. So let me ask the clerk to call forward our public speakers at this time.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Also note for the record that we received 4 e-comments on this item. We have 6 requests to speak on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 1, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your line. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I would remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Erin, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 4529. 4529.
Good morning. This is Brenda Garcia Millan. I'm a research and policy analyst at Climate Action Campaign. First, I'm urging the board to ensure that these general plan elements will help the county achieve zero carbon and are in alignment with the forthcoming CAP and regional sustainability plan. This housing element update is a golden opportunity to tackle both our housing and climate crisis, and we urge you to prioritize equitable development. To solve our housing crisis, we must build sustainable communities with ample affordable housing. We urge you to prioritize as many sites as possible in VMT-efficient areas near jobs, transit infrastructure, and services. Building sprawl remains a major source of emissions and increases the threat of wildfires. We urge you to interconnect the housing and safety elements in a way that stops developments that keep putting our residents in harm's way. Finally, we urge you to consult with local leaders and organizations and use the environmental justice element to prioritize investments in communities most impacted by the climate crisis and environmental injustice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6742. 6742.
Good morning, board members and chairman. My name is Teresa Bailey, and I reside in District 2. And first and foremost, I humbly invite you to read the book, Our Hills and Valleys. It's a history of the Helix Spring Valley area. It's a wonderful book, and it might inspire you to rethink what plans are made for our region. My position regarding the housing and EJ elements pertain to the pandemic and why we should not be making quick decisions regarding affordable housing and rezones at this time. First, the pandemic has made this a very tough 12 months for businesses and citizens nationwide. We have not been able to venture out in our communities for much more than groceries. Most communication is done via email, conference calls, and webinars, which is very difficult and not optimal. The restraints of COVID are enormous, and in particular regarding rezone of Spring Valley and Valley de Oro. people are not able to attend in-person meetings in the community to adequately respond to these plans. I, by chance, discovered these plans about 30 days ago and barely could jump on a couple webinars and get a glimpse of what was being proposed. We need adequate time to digest this information versus 2 days to provide a comment. This leads to my second reason for taking a wait-and-see approach. Affordable housing in San Diego is at a crisis, yes. However, I feel that if we wait and see, we might find that businesses will elect to function post-pandemic differently, with many employees to remaining working from home. It is my belief that this will create generous amounts of commercial office space that could be converted into village residential and other high-density projects. In addition, my region, District 2, we have 2 grocery stores and very little VMT. So I feel there are flaws in the selection of these 2 regions as being optimal rezoning sites. In conclusion, my wish would be for the county to work with us, Spring Valley and Valley de Oro, in helping us create a better living environment for the residents that live here now. We are living in an area that has been considered blighted, and I've heard it said that no one should live in one of these rezones, and specifically it was stated SV1 and SV2. And including homeless people should not have to live here. This is alarming to me to hear my region of the county referred to this way, because it's a little true, but not. This sets off alarm bells to me. Please imagine if we were given the opportunity to create a new community with the help of consultants and professional designers, we might be able to push for a rebirth of Spring Valley and
Your time is up.
solve this
Thank
precious
you.
piece of the country.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2750. 2750.
Good morning. Dan Silver, Endangered Habitats League. First on the safety element, in the current draft, there is little or no attention to avoiding new development in high fire severity zones. Staff says that this will go perhaps in the land use element or in the revised climate action plan. My point is that it needs to go somewhere, and I asked the board to watchdog this, and I still think the safety element could be strengthened here. A big problem in the safety element is that there's no metrics for safe evacuation. There's nothing meaningful in the draft about evacuation. It'll all be, just pushed down the line to developers, consultants who will produce self-serving studies. So this is a problem. Vegetation management is something I've made suggestions to improve. I think the element's on the right track with vegetation management, but needs to be far more explicit in what works and what doesn't. Finally, it needs to add some language on ignition control, particularly along roadways. And I put these in writing, and I'll send these to your offices as well. On the housing element, I'm very torn and conflicted by option 1 and 2. My biggest question is, what difference on the ground does the site inventory make? Things in the inventory may or may not get built. Things out of the inventory may or may not get built. What is really the impact of it? I am concerned about unintended consequences running into AB 686. The staff noted that around the Sprinter, Buena Creek Sprinter Station, it's a high fire area, but it actually looks more like urban infill. It's not on the interface. It's not out in the wildlands. And so I'm wondering if a more site-specific analysis and looking at actual fire risk would perhaps help us avoid a very cumbersome rezoning. So that is my main comment on the, I'd like to avoid the rezoning if possible, and maybe there's some flexibility that could result from a more site-specific analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4720. 4720. 4720. Please press *6 to unmute yourself at this time. If we don't hear from you when your number is called, we'll come back to you. Our next caller is 4458. 4458.
Good morning, Matthew Adams calling from the Building Industry Association, an association of 650 member companies representing a workforce of over 35,000 men and women. We very much appreciate the opportunity to comment on this stage of the housing element update. It's clear that we have a housing crisis because we have a production problem. In fact, yesterday's 6-hour discussion on evictions and rent control is part of a consequence of this production problem. And as you consider the options before you this morning, we ask that you keep this in mind. The more restrictions you put in place make it more difficult to build homes. It's clear from the staff report that option 2 poses more problems in the ability to produce more sorely needed housing. The BIA asked that the board not limit itself to merely reaching the 6,700 unit RHNA target, but do much more. 800 units a year is a drop in the bucket when it comes to the housing need, especially for a jurisdiction that has the largest land area. And the county must be equally vigilant in making it easier to produce the homes as it is in directing where you want the homes to be built. Now that means we need by right development, more self-certification, density bonus for middle income homes that are essential for a healthy housing market. The BIA asks that the Board of Supervisors review all their regulations through the prism of housing impacts. That is, what does a regulation mean to the cost and the ability to produce housing? The county and other jurisdictions must truly commit to more housing production of all product types if we are to bring this crisis under control. Lastly, we would like to thank county staff for their professionalism and their outreach to the regulated community. It was a very professional and positive experience, and they should be commended for their efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4720. 4720.
Good morning. Good morning, County Supervisors. My name is Yolanda Ramirez Escamilla. I am representing the Lower Sweetwater Fire Protection District as one of their board members. We represent Lincoln Acres. Lincoln Acres is an unincorporated island between Chula Vista, Bonita, and National City, and in San Diego County's District 1. As the Lower Sweetwater Fire Protection District, we were not provided an opportunity to review the safety element, nor have I seen evidence that any of our residents have been notified, as I have not. Due to administrative errors on the part of the Planning and Development Services, the district was not afforded an adequate period for review. The Lower Sweetwater Fire Protection District is requesting a 30-day extension for review of the safety element, 14th of May, hopefully. We ask for this time to allow our community to respond, as we have serious hazards due to the way this neighborhood is has been so densely grown. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item. Chair Fletcher.
Thank you. I've got a couple questions for staff. I think probably the best way for us to proceed, I know a number of board members will have comments, questions, clarifications, and maybe we kind of do a round of that, and then we can see if we can settle on the path of most support moving forward. Just to begin, I think I'm channeling my inner Dan Silver here a little bit of some of the conflict we face in this. But just to clarify one thing, I think there was a fair point made that in terms of actual impact, what we're talking about is preparing a report to submit to the state. And so the actual impact in terms of what people can build and what's allowable under the general plan is not impacted in any measurable way by the action we take today. Obviously, if we considered a rezoning, that might potentially impact it a few years from now. But I just want to get clarification that my understanding of that is correct. Essentially, what we're doing is helping segment a part of inventory to prepare a report to the state, but it doesn't substantively change what could or could not be built today. Is that correct?
Chair, you are correct.
Okay. The second question, I want to see if someone could address the concerns raised around the safety element. I understand we're not voting on that today. We did have a good walkthrough and presentation, but if we could just get some comments. We had a couple speakers kind of comment on the safety element issue and just wanted to get some staff thoughts and feedback on that.
Chair Fletcher, I think the most recent comment that was made here about the review period, we have been in touch with the Lower Sweetwater Fire Protection District. There was an error that delayed us getting the materials to them, but they have received the materials now, and we had met with them last week to discuss their preliminary concerns. The public review for agencies is actually a longer public review. It's a 45-day public review that does not conclude until April 26th. If the Fire Protection District would like time even beyond the 26th, the county does have the discretion to accept comments and consider their input even after that date.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question is what is the process for a site-specific analysis of rezone? Meaning not an entire section, right? Not a whole section of the county, but I have had, one landowner in particular said, hey, I've got this piece of land, it's not zoned to do it. It meets all the criteria that your board ever dreams of doing. I would be interested in upzoning mine, and that would be a situation where we'd have a higher degree of confidence something would actually get built there. And so what is the mechanism to do that on a kind of more specific type effort instead of a more broad scale rezone effort?
Chair Fletcher, the process to rezone a property is limited in terms of looking at a specific site. The state prevents us from doing what's called spot zoning or changing the zoning for one particular site. So based upon that, the approach that was taken was to look at corridors or large blocks around a specific site. So if one site were desired, we would look at that site, but the surrounding area as well, and propose options for increasing or changing the zoning.
How long does that, I know that's a difficult question to answer, but in general, is that the same as the 3-year timeline, or is that something that's doable?
We've estimated, yes, up to 3 years, and that's given the environmental documentation that's necessary, public outreach, and it also depends on the specifics of the site, what constraints there might be or environmental considerations.
Okay. Let me go to my colleagues. I see Supervisor Watson-Reamer with their hand up, and then I imagine everyone will have a few comments on this. Supervisor Watson-Reamer.
Great, thank you so much. So first of all, I absolutely want to thank staff for working on these options. This reflects a tremendous amount of work, and you've done an absolutely extraordinary amount of work and a great job on trying to align the RHNA inventory with our new priorities and vision around, really taking action to save our planet for future generations. So thankful for the quality. I think just very big picture, I certainly respect the inclusion of option 2, which was done at our direction as a board. But my view is that we should pursue option 1, which with some small modifications. I think the basic point is that we can, if we move forward with option 1, with a small amendment, basically saying that we exclude the 11 sites that are not VMT efficient. And these 11 sites that are not VMT efficient would be the ones that are on a second reading. So my view is that we go with option 1 with the modification of amending to exclude the 11 VMT efficient sites that are included on the second reading, therefore bringing our inventory into closer alignment with our prior direction to staff. Let me just explain a little bit about my thinking on this. As I think Chair Fletcher insinuated, this doesn't mean, us as putting forward, adopting this plan and deciding, where we can indicate that we actually have capacity to meet our RENA obligations doesn't mean that anything's going to be built tomorrow, right? It just means that this is where we could have something built. It also doesn't mean that the whatever is built actually is affordable. It just means that it meets density requirements that are being used for a proxy for affordability. So it neither this plan neither means housing is going to be built, nor does it mean that when it is built, it's affordable. But what I think we don't want to do is get into a sort of a long process of bringing more inventory online through a rezoning process that then would then begin to nibble away at our general plan without necessarily really advancing our VMT and our climate objectives. So I definitely support option one, but I think there's a way in which we can do a better job of taking into account the VMT criteria within the constraints of option one, and remembering that it's only the sites that are showing up for a second time that are streamlined in terms of approval, right? So I'm primarily focused on those sites that are showing up for a second time because that's where the streamlining comes in. So for those sites that are included in the inventory a second time, that there's 11 that do not meet our VMT efficient criteria. And so we should exclude those. And if you look at what's outlined in option one, it looks to me like there's a 31% buffer, which is like a massive, massive buffer. And so if we drop those 11 sites, we still have a 20% buffer, which is quite substantial. So we can drop those 11 sites, still meet our buffer, not need to rezone, not need to get into any kind of, concerns about general plan amendments, meet our RENA criteria, and taking into account our climate objectives. So those are my thoughts. I appreciate the massive amount of input of community partners who've been really, really involved in this process. Really grateful for the guidance and the thoughts of everyone who's reached out to share how they see us being able to move forward effectively and take into account all these various equity considerations and sustainability considerations.
Let me just ask, thank you, Supervisor Wasserman. Let me ask staff real quick, just to clarify, if you did option one, but you took out those 11 VMT efficient areas, how close is that to getting you to option 2B? Like, what is the delta there? And then what would the new total RENA units available look like if we were to consider that path?
Chair Fletcher, option 2B will actually remove a much larger portion of the unincorporated area in terms of being eligible for RENA. The suggestion by Supervisor Lawson-Ramir is to just remove 11 relisted sites that are located outside of the VMT efficient areas. And what that does is that it will not provide any type of streamlining benefit to those sites if they're removed.
Got it. But what would that bring the new total RENA units available to for submission of this plan to the state?
Chair Fletcher, the reduction in units would only be 54 units.
Okay, so not a substantive change.
Correct.
In terms of what we're doing. So we'd still be at 87 something.
It would be approximately 8,000 units, 8,700 units.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So not a substantive change. So it'd be very, very consistent with option one. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, I think with the option one, I think is my preferred option. But what I don't want to do is streamline the approval process for the VMT inefficient sites. So there's only 11 that are going to be relisted, and it's the relisted sites that are then subjected to the streamlining. So we would eliminate the 11 that would be subject to the streamlining. So we're sort of dealing with the fact that we don't want to create. We don't want to exclude those sites from a scrutiny by including them in a relisting.
Yeah, but just to clarify with staff, those 11 sites are only 54 units of housing, and so we would still be submitting a plan of 8,762 total RENA units available. So I'm not diminishing. I'm not diminishing the significance of what you're saying, but it's only 54 units out of more than 8,000. So it's.
Mr. Chair, can we just get the map back up? So as we're talking about these 11 areas, that perhaps they could be re-identified. So we so
You
I
may
can visualize.
I'm seeing them on the.
I just was hoping to see the map again.
Yeah, we can definitely put the map up. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Maybe they can show us those 11. Oh, they got them for us right there.
Supervisor, this map shows a total of 10 sites located in the community of Ramona, which fall outside of the blue area, which is the VMT efficient area. The other one site is located in the community of Fallbrook. As you can see, this also falls outside of the VMT efficient area.
All right, we'll go to Supervisor Vargas, and Supervisor Anderson, we'll come right back to you after Supervisor Vargas.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. So I do also want to acknowledge the hard work that the staff did on this item today and really support preparing the safety element, environmental justice element update given and the information that was provided. As for the housing element, I'm happy to second Supervisor Lawson-Remer's motion with the amendment of the 11, especially knowing that it's a few units, but I do think that fulfills our arena goals for the state and it requires no additional funding and it really would allow us to meet the deadline. So again, I just want to say thank you to the staff. The rezoning options that are coming forward to the board are providing great insights of where our county can propose housing in the future. And this is really important to me as we look forward to continue to develop more comprehensive strategies where and how we advance additional housing opportunities. So I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. We'll go to Supervisor Anderson.
I was wondering if it'd be appropriate for an update from the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee, because as we move forward, in my mind, it makes more sense that a lot of the housing issues be included in the Climate Action Plan. And this is more of a drill for the state to check a box. Where the rubber really meets the road is that Climate Action Plan, as I understand it. The second issue I want to bring up is the AB 686, I think is really pertinent because as we look at what's available in Spring Valley is an impacted community. And the notion that we're going to be able to add more there, I just don't see that as a possibility. And I also am concerned that if in our plan moving forward that we eliminate industrial commercial properties and make them residential in order to meet the requirement, we are robbing potential job opportunities and career paths for the future. Once you convert that, you'll never have those properties again to be available. And when you think about high paying wages and wages close to home, it makes it more sense to leave those in place to allow people to have a place to go to work. We would have a lower VMT if we didn't say that only San Diego can provide jobs. If we had more jobs in the community and people were like in Borrego, where we have a big clump there, because we're not saying that people are going to be driving all around because we're really truly creating a village. Why wouldn't we want to look at this from more than one lens and think in terms of creating those career opportunities, and then the VMT window would change significantly. So I'm asking to look at it from a different lens at the same time, not getting so far into the weeds when really, and maybe you all don't agree, but the Climate Action Plan is where the rubber meets the road for us. And then we would have the opportunities of rezoning and doing other things on our own timeline that makes sense for San Diegans. So that's a big speech was, I like option one.
All right, perfect. And I think at some point it would be good for our Climate Action Subcommittee to update us a little bit. Obviously not at this moment, but I agree with you. It'd be good to track the progress around that with what we're doing. Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity here. I too agree with option one with Supervisor Lawson-Remer's removal of the non-VMT. I think that's the best option moving forward. It's cheaper, and we can get it done a lot sooner complying with ARENA state requirements. I do want to just kind of emphasize, and I know staff brought it up, Mr. Eifert brought it up about the environmental justice communities. I couldn't help but notice that there's no environmental justice communities identified in North County. Even though we got rural communities of Borrego Springs, Ranchita, Warner Springs, unincorporated areas of Vista that I think need to be included. And I was concerned that the new general plan policies that would prioritize funding for new amenities like buildings and parks and things like that were limited only to those environmental justice communities in the South and East County. And I agree with Supervisor Anderson. We also have to have jobs so that people don't have to commute as far to work. That's kind of the disconnect we have, is where people work and where they live are pretty far apart. So I understand that staff is updating the criteria on what constitutes an environmental justice community. And I'd like to just reiterate my request that, and encourage them along that North County communities also be included in that, so we can kind of spread this housing around. I think more housing is justified. And if, as Mr. Adams had mentioned, if we can build it and we can do it cheaper without putting $750,000 towards a rezone here for the state arena, I don't think is necessary. So thank you for the opportunity to chime in.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. So what we've got on the table is a motion by Supervisor Lawson-Remer, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to adopt the recommendations in this board item, including direction to staff to move forward with option 1 with the exclusion of the 11 sites that have been outlined. Let me ask staff if they have any comments or concerns with where we are or where we're moving forward, or if anything is unclear.
No concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Any final comments from my colleagues? All right, Wes Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. And just to reiterate for the record that includes the recommendations that are identified in the board letter, and then in the action sheets, the direction to staff for the safety elements and the environmental justice element, and then the option 1 that you identified.
That is correct.
Great. With that, Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We are a efficient zone ourselves. Let's go to agenda item number 2, notice public hearing cost recovery proposal. We will have a presentation from staff. I will ask any public speakers on this item. I don't see any, but if there are any, please call in at this time. We'll give staff a chance to reset, and then we'll turn it over to them for a presentation.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. My name is Vince Nicoletti, Acting Assistant Director with Planning and Development Services. This item is a request to approve proposed adjustments related to land development fees, deposits, and hourly rates for the Departments of Planning and Development Services, Public Works, and Parks and Recreation. The land development team works together to review projects ranging from replacement of a home water heater or installation of solar to construction of housing. Services include environmental and community character review for discretionary permits, all the way through inspection of homes and public infrastructure, such as the roads, parks, and pathways that make up our communities. The primary reason for fee adjustments is County Policy B29 that directs departments to recover the full cost for services provided to agencies or individuals. One of the changes in recent years is that we have committed to returning to the board on a more frequent basis for fee adjustments rather than every several years. This helps minimize the level of change. As with most organizations, we have costs that have changed over time. The county's 5-year negotiated labor contract, which went into effect in 2017, is a key driver for our costs. For fiscal year 21-22, the average salary and benefit increase for all LUSH departments is on average approximately 8% per FTE due to salary and one-time payout, health benefits, and retirement cost increases. These changes, among others, such as increased facility costs, contribute to adjusted costs for us to recover. Changes that will go into effect in the upcoming fiscal year under the existing labor contract are reflected in this proposed fee adjustment. Lastly, Luge did not move forward with a fee adjustment last year due to the timing and uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, this package is essentially 2 years of cost increases that would need to be covered. Approval of the fee adjustment will ensure departments are able to fulfill state mandates and regulatory code changes. Our comprehensive cost recovery analysis is a consistent approach across the enterprise. Our fee adjustment methodology is consistent with Board Policy B29 and conforms with existing cost policies and procedures. At the start of the fiscal year, to develop fees and rates, departments start with time studies. As staff work on projects, they code their time to each permit or record type. We use that information to look at historical hours by project to estimate the amount of time required to process each project type. Once we have the amount of time per project type, we apply an hourly rate. Hourly rates are calculated by using salary and benefit costs as well as the services and supplies. Once the hourly rates are calculated, the cost to provide a service is either classified as a flat fee or a deposit. Flat fees are used for projects that are similar in scope with few variables, such as a building permit for a 2,000 square foot home. Deposits are used when there are several variables associated with a project, such as discretionary permits with differing land location, topography, and biology. We also look at other jurisdictions to examine how they conduct cost recovery, as well as how county rates compare to other jurisdictions. We also go through several checks and balances, such as review and approval from the county auditor and controller on methodology, accuracy, and compliance with Board Policy B29 to ensure fees are developed in an accurate and transparent way. For the 3 departments, we have a total of 254 fees and deposits. We're proposing to convert 4 deposits to flat fees. We're adding 8 new fees in PDS, 4 of which are for self-certification options to reduce processing time and cost for our customers. 3 are offering flat fee options for projects currently that offer a deposit yet have a similar scope. And 1 is establishing a flat fee for residential EV charging in the fee ordinance. This was previously part of a miscellaneous electric permit fee. We've also reviewed the hourly rates for 85 position classifications. While costs have increased, we have worked to contain them through innovations. Today, over 60% of our building permit volume is issued online, saving staff time and cost, as well as reducing the need for customers to visit county offices. We expanded our online and digital services that allow the land development team to meet our customers where they're at to provide more convenient and efficient ways of conducting business with our departments. Some of these efforts include self-service reports, text message building inspection management, and mobile field inspection applications, as well as online permits and payments. When we went live with our Acela land development permitting system in 2012, we began tracking the savings resulting from innovations we deploy each year. The savings we've achieved since then is approximately $1.1 million in annual savings. This is annual savings as a result of improvements we've done over that time. Savings such as this are passed on to our customers. Without these cost containment measures, plan check and building permit fees would be roughly 6% higher, and hourly rates would be roughly 1% higher for land development. We also have several ongoing re-engineering efforts underway to help reduce overall processing time and costs. So far this year, we've launched several online digital services that we anticipate will save an additional $350,000 annually. These services include expanded online application, mobile applications, and digitized and automated some of our administrative functions, such as stamping and approving applications. Our services primarily fall into 2 categories, those paid for by project charges and those paid for by general purpose revenue. General purpose revenue pays for services that are regional in nature, meaning that we'd be doing them regardless of how many customers are coming through the door. The departments receive approximately $700,000 in our budget for these regional services. If we didn't receive this funding, building fee increases would be approximately 2.6% higher, and hourly rates would be 3.4% higher than proposed. Some of the B29 fee waivers include building permit fee waivers for fire survivors and homeowners, Business Relief Act, and items such as home water heater replacement. 2 of our newer fee waivers are impact fee waivers for accessory dwelling units, which started in January 2019, and renewable energy fee waivers such as advanced energy storage and residential electric vehicle charging that was directed in December of 2020. Project charges are paid for by customers. They're either for direct services, such as a planner or engineer doing the plan check on a project, or through indirect services, such as the portion of Department Fiscal Services, GIS, or Human Resources that support the direct service. This table contains a high-level view of the changes for all 3 departments, which includes 2 years of changes since our last approved fee package. PDS is highlighted in green, DPW in blue, and DPR in gray. For PDS, the average fee would increase $44 or 3.7%. The average intake deposit would increase $231 or 4%, and the average hourly rate would increase $9 or 4.3%. For the Department of Public Works, the average fee would increase $10 or 4.2%. The average intake deposit would increase $81 or 3.5%, and the average hourly rate would increase $7 or 3.8%. DPR does not have its own fees or deposits. Staff charge against developer deposits for park conditioning of subdivisions of 50 homes or more. On average, DPR works on roughly 15 projects a year. If approved, DPR's average hourly rate would increase $10 or 8.4%. Since DPR has a smaller pool of staff reviewing privately initiated land development projects, changes such as step increases in a few positions contributed to this hourly rate being higher than that of PDS and DPW on average. In comparison to other jurisdictions, this chart shows the plan check and permit fees as calculated for a 2,700 square foot single-family dwelling, the same size the Building Industry Association uses for a prototype home in their annual fee survey. The yellow bar represents the current fee, and the blue bar represents the proposed fee for the County of San Diego. Our current fee is $4,810, and if approved, it would increase by 5% to $5,053, an increase of $243. We would remain the fourth lowest in the region and be roughly $1,300 below the median cost. As part of our outreach, staff met with several stakeholder groups. While no concerns specific to fee changes were raised, customers highlighted the importance of establishing accurate cost estimates and schedules at the start of a project. Stakeholders acknowledged variables can impact project budgets and schedules and highlighted the importance of the applicant and staff regularly discussing project status and causes of possible changes to schedules or budgets throughout the life of a project. In 2020, the board directed fee waivers of up to $420,000 for waiver of building plan check and permit and centerline fees for restaurants impacted by COVID-19 to assist with any remodeling needed to reopen safely. Staff worked quickly to continue serving all customers and the public by expanding online payments, transitioning counter services to virtual service, and conducting virtual outreach and mobile inspections. We also conducted necessary field inspections while taking the required pandemic preventative measures. In the 13-month period since March 2020, PDS conducted over 40,000 building inspections. Staff is also actively working to conduct community needs assessments to improve service and access to the services for all stakeholders and ensure we are engaging with and meeting the needs of our underserved communities. This cost recovery proposal will ensure full and equitable cost recovery for services provided to customers. Staff's recommendations as reflected in the board letter are on April 7th to find the proposed actions exempt from CEQA under section 15273, waive board policy B29 to continue existing fee waiver programs, including waiving permit fees for fire survivor rebuilds, permits under the Green Building Incentive Program, Homeowner Relief Act, an accessory dwelling unit permit and impact fee, as well as residential renewable energy. Approve, read title, and waive further reading of ordinances, and if approved, set the second hearing for May 5th. The final recommendation, if on April 7th the board takes action recommended on May 5th, is to adopt the proposed amendments to the County Administrative Code. If there is no fee increase, the land development teams need to request alternative funding in the amount of $1.2 million. Of that, $1 million is for planning and development, $213,000 for Department of Public Works, and just over $2,500 for Parks and Recreation. If there is no fee increase and no alternative funding identified, the land development team would not fill vacancies, which will reduce the staffing level. This will cause operational impacts, including increased processing time and additional cost to applicants' overall plan check times. This concludes our presentation, and staff is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before, let me ask the clerk first. I don't believe we have any requests for public comment. Let me ask if that is correct or if someone's called in.
That's correct, Chair Fletcher. There are no requests to speak on this item.
Real quick for staff, before I go to my colleagues, just to make clear, this is not the next item we're going to hear. Item 3 is the DEH and other related fees that restaurants pay on a regular basis. This is just development associated costs for building and construction. Is that correct?
Chair, that is correct.
Okay. So let me go to my colleagues again. I think the next item, I certainly have concerns on the increases in item 3 surrounding restaurants and those that are impacted coming out of COVID. I have less concerns on this item. It's not a significant amount of money. We're still going to be one of the lowest jurisdictions, and this is more for development and construction type projects. But Let me go to my colleagues. We'll start with Supervisor Lawson-Remer, and then we'll go to Supervisor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. It's not a significant amount of money, but one thing I did have a question for staff, and then maybe we could, maybe with some additional staff input, there might be a way to make an amendment, is if there's a way to structure the fees to streamline and prioritize projects that meet our affordable housing goals as ones that would be less impacted by any fee increases. So if there's a way to put a criterion to consider how we meet our affordable housing needs and how we structure our fee increases. That's a question for staff. I don't want to overburden this, but it seemed like an opportunity to advance our broader objectives in how we structure our fees.
Through the chair, Supervisor, there is an existing policy and program in which it allows affordable housing projects to get expedite plan check services through the land development process. And we work with Department of Housing and Community Development in that program.
Yeah, so I guess the question I'm asking you is in this new fee structure, how does that new fee structure integrate and connect with the expedited framework for affordable housing units? You know, is there consideration of that existing framework, or are these fees across the board? You know, better understanding how we're taking into account that affordable housing prioritization in the new fee structure.
I apologize. In relation to the fee structure, the fees themselves would remain the same, even if it is an affordable housing project. The benefit to the applicant is faster processing times. And so the overall processing time, be it discretionary, final engineering, or building, we treat them as expedite to give them the benefit of a shorter processing time, which can help them save overall costs, but the actual fees or hourly rates themselves would be the same for affordable housing projects.
Okay, that's helpful. So I'm going to note, you know, I certainly am interested in how we better use all of our levers to encourage affordable housing construction. So I'm going to definitely be taking a look at, you know, are there ways that we should stagger our fee structure to incentivize and encourage affordable housing. But that's not an action for today, but just sort of putting on the table that that's something I will be looking at in the future.
Supervisor Anderson.
When I was campaigning, I talked to a lot of folks that were building projects in my district, and the number one issue wasn't our fee structure, it was the time in responses moving forward. And the delays were by far the biggest issue that people were facing. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion in support of this.
Wonderful. We have a motion. I'm happy to second that, to adopt the 3 recommendations as outlined in this board letter. Any other comments from other colleagues? All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Anderson, a second by myself, to adopt the recommendations in agenda item 2. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, we're now going to move to agenda item 3, still on the topic of fees, a little bit different group of ones here. We'll give the staff a chance to reset. I don't believe we have any comments on this item, so we will hear a presentation from the staff, and then we'll return to board deliberation. So as they get settled in there, we will let them take it away when they're ready.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Amy Harbert, Director of the Department of Environmental Health and Quality, or DEHQ. With me today is Rebecca Lafreniere, the Division Director of Environmental Health. We are here today to present our cost recovery proposal for fiscal year 21-22. DEHQ implements more than 40 programs and is committed to environmental justice as we conduct inspections, compliance monitoring, and enforce environmental laws and regulations. Each program that we implement improves public health and/or environmental quality in our communities. We've all been witness to the devastating effects COVID-19 has had on the lives of all county residents. These impacts are both immediate, affecting our day-to-day lives, as well as long-lasting, and they require us to rebuild. In DEHQ, we have seen firsthand the challenges that our customers have had to face. The businesses we regulate, including the restaurants, body art shops, massage parlors, organized camps, temporary events, and mobile food facilities, were significantly impacted by the pandemic. The proposal today was developed with an equitable lens and takes into account the opportunity to use our one-time resources to help buffer these effects. While the economic uncertainty resulting from COVID-19 makes having the cost recovery proposal discussions even more challenging, we are here today to share with you the results of our annual cost analysis. Like all county departments, DEHQ is required by Board Policy B29 to recover the full cost of services provided to agencies or individuals. There are multiple factors that impact our costs, which are the basis for our fees, and like most organizations, our costs change over time. A key driver for our costs is the county's negotiated labor agreement. In fiscal year 21-22, the average salary and benefit increases for all LUSH departments is approximately 8% per full-time employee due to salary and one-time payouts, health benefits, and retirement cost increases. Additionally, DEHQ is required to implement new state and federal mandates that impact our operating costs. DEHQ did not move forward with the fee proposal last year due to the timing and uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic. The proposal before you today addresses a 10.8% cost increase since our last approved fee adjustments in fiscal year 19-20. To complete a comprehensive cost and fee analysis, DEHQ followed an approach that's consistent across the enterprise, starting from time studies to hourly rate and fee calculations and concluding with the auditor and controller's review and verification. We reviewed all 290 fees. 106 fees, or 37%, will remain unchanged due to the department's cost containment efforts. We're proposing to delete 13 fees, either because they've been consolidated into existing fees or they're no longer needed. We're also proposing to modify 5 fees where we were able to break out and create new lower cost fee categories, and to add 5 new fee categories, 4 of which were requested by industry. Every year, DEHQ does all that we can to contain our cost and apply savings that occur as a result of our innovations and efficiencies. Prior cost recovery proposals included $322,000 in efficiencies and ongoing savings, and they're shown on the left-hand side of the screen. For fiscal year 21-22, DEHQ applied over $750,000 in process innovations or efficiencies through modifications to our hazmat training program, streamlining the California Environmental Reporting System, or CERS application process, implementing the medical waste registration program, and conversion of reporting tools and virtual services. With cost containment efforts, our cost recovery proposal for your consideration addresses a 3.5% cost increase over 2 years, or an average 1.75% cost increase per year. Without these cost containment efforts, fees would have needed to increase 7.3% additionally. This table shows a sample of proposed fees in DEHQ in the food program and for the Certified Unified Program Agency, or CUPA. No fee changes are proposed for body art, massage, pools, or organized camps. Included in this cost recovery proposal is the use of department reserves to offset fee increases, this one-time resource that we can offer. Since 2004, the board has maintained a commitment of a reserve fund in the general fund for DEHQ to be a one-time funding source, given the uncertainty of future regulatory changes in environmental health programs, public or environmental health emergency response needs, or changes in the economic conditions that can influence permit volumes. This past year has been unprecedented with the COVID-19 global pandemic, and we are proposing to use $1.1 million in one-time funding offsets from departmental reserves, which includes completely drawing down and applying the entire food program reserve funding of $910,000, and for the CUPA the use of $196,000 in one-time funds to offset the addition of 3 new positions being added to address unpermitted facilities. This helps to offset the initial costs of these staff until the revenue from the unpermitted facilities is realized. I will now turn it over to Rebecca Lafreniere to discuss the options for board consideration for the Small Drinking Water Systems Program.
DEHQ's Small Drinking Water Systems Program is optional at the local level. The Safe Drinking Water Act sets the federal standards for protecting water supplies across the nation. In California, the State Water Resources Control Board administers this act and the associated state drinking water regulations by overseeing small drinking water systems in 29 of the 58 counties. In the 29 counties, including San Diego, local agencies implement the program under a delegation agreement with the state and act as a local primacy agency, or LPA. DEHQ, as the LPA, issues annual operating permits, conducts inspections, and reviews drinking water sample results to ensure drinking water systems are providing safe water to their customers. The 146 small water systems DEHQ oversees are located primarily in the unincorporated areas of the region and typically serve residents and businesses within rural communities, mobile home parks, campgrounds, and schools. State law classifies small drinking water systems based on the potential risks to the public. Oversight of the first water system classification, seen on this chart, state smalls, is required by law to be a local health agency program, and the 17 state small systems in San Diego are not part of the delegation agreement with the state. The other 3 water system classifications, transient non-community, non-transient non-community, and community, are the state's responsibility. However, DEHQ regulates these systems locally as the LPA through the delegation agreement with the state. For each of the 4 classifications, the regulatory requirements for water testing and maintenance of the infrastructure increase as the potential risk to the public increases, with state smalls having the lower risk and less regulations, and community systems having more potential risk and requirements. The County of San Diego has had a continuous role in ensuring safe drinking water in the region since the 1950s. Despite cost containment measures and leveraging operational improvements, costs for this program have continued to increase. Throughout the years, limited one-time grant funds have been received from the state. However, there has not been a stable funding source for local governments to implement this state program. In 2017, with $188,000 in grant funds remaining, the board considered several funding options and adopted an incremental 2.5% annual increase in permit fees from the 2010 rate until each water system reached full cost recovery or until the grant funds were expended. With the annual increase capped at 2.5% and with increasing state mandated activities, cost for the program exceeded revenue in fiscal year 2019-20. At the end of this fiscal year, the one-time grant funding will be fully expended and will no longer be available to offset costs or fees in the future. In addition to increased costs, since the board last provided direction in 2017, the program has continued to experience increased mandates and new requirements. For example, all water system data must be entered directly into the state's database, and ongoing maintenance and quality control of this data is required. There are now increased monitoring and sampling requirements associated with lead, copper, and total coliforms, including additional investigation, assessment, and reporting for positive total coliform results. When there is a water system applying for a new permit or a system that needs treatment, DEHQ is required to do a concurrent review with the state. Additionally, for water systems applying for a new permit or permit amendment, DEHQ ensures appropriate California Environmental Quality Act documentation is submitted to the appropriate agency. And additional reporting requirements, such as the annual electronic reporting to the state system operations, have also been mandated. When comparing DEHQ's program to the state's, both the state and DEHQ implement their programs in accordance with the service levels mandated in law, and permitting, inspection, monitoring, and reporting standards are the same. The state charges lower fees than DEHQ and also offers reduced fees and additional funding assistance for water systems that serve a state-defined disadvantaged community. The state is able to offset their fees with other state revenue sources not available to LPAs like DEHQ. Additionally, the state implements a larger program that includes regulation of both large water systems and small water systems across the state and has over 200 staff. The state staff include engineers that can provide a higher level of technical expertise and support that can be offered to system operators. The systems program also utilizes professional contractors for consolidation and technical assistant programs. DEHQ program has 2.6 staff and utilizes environmental health specialists. In the first option, fees would increase to the fiscal year 2021 full cost recovery rate in compliance with board policy B29. Because the department has been implementing the direction from the Board of Supervisors in 2017 to cap annual fee increases and discount the fees using one-time grant funding, which has now been fully expended, there would be on average a 39% increase in fees to water system. In option 2, DEHQ would charge the fees at the same rates the state charges. These fees are established in state law and vary based on water system classification. Some state systems would pay a flat fee, while others would pay a fee based on the number of service connections or the number of people served. In this option, the fees paid by water systems would decrease by an average of $1,894. Should the board elect to implement fees based on the state model, DEHQ would need approximately $436,000 in additional funding to close the revenue gap in fiscal year 2021-22, ongoing funding to future years, and a waiver of board policy B29. The 17 state small systems on the top row would continue to be regulated by DEHQ as a local program. Their fees would stay at the current invoiced rate and would be analyzed in the coming year based on time and activity data specific to these systems. A third option for board consideration is returning the program to the state. The county is not required to be an LPA, and some LPAs throughout the state face similar funding deficit issues. We have heard from 10 of the 29 other LPAs, and 2 of them are also considering returning their programs to the state due to the increased mandates and funding challenges. DEHQ met with the state to discuss how the program could be transitioned over the next fiscal year. State law allows for termination of delegation agreement with a 120-day advance notice or withdrawal of mutual agreement. However, in order to ensure a smooth transition with no gaps in service delivery, a negotiated agreement is recommended to ensure the state has adequate staffing and minimize any impacts to the water system operators. Should the board elect this option, water systems would continue to pay their existing fee rate during the one-year transition. DEHQ would utilize $187,000 in one-time health realignment funding to cover the revenue gap, and a waiver of board policy B29 is required. We notified water system owners and operators of the state and held stakeholder meetings in March, where we discussed programmatic information and presented the 3 options before you today. Additionally, we reached out to them directly by email and phone calls to share the information. We received 5 comments. 2 indicated that they preferred option 3, and 3 indicated they did not want fee increases. There's also been 5 comments received on this item supporting option 3, returning the program to the state.
In addition to conducting stakeholder outreach in the Small Drinking Water Systems program, the department solicited stakeholder feedback across our various program areas by conducting 16 virtual stakeholder meetings, sending emails to permitted facilities, posting information online, emailing and calling contacts, attending workshops with industry groups. This year, DEHQ also used a feature in the virtual meeting and workshop platforms that allowed participants to choose to have translation into the 5 threshold languages. Email and website notifications offered translation services and a point of contact where customers could speak and ask questions as well. Overall, stakeholders indicated an understanding for DEHQ's need to annually evaluate its costs and fees, express concerns regarding the current economic conditions and challenges, and an appreciation for the education-first approach DEHQ takes in its regulatory programs and the responsiveness of services provided. In 2020, the board provided economic relief to businesses impacted by COVID-19 through through deferment of annual permit fees for impacted businesses such as restaurants, body art, swimming pools, Coupa, and the small drinking water system program operators. Additionally, the board also directed a fee waiver for the food plan check customers of $1.1 million in funding was appropriated. The total amount of revenue deferred was $18.1 million, and the total amount of revenue collected through April the 2nd was $15.8 million, leaving a current gap of $2.3 million. Staff worked quickly to continue to serve businesses and the public by expanding our online payment options, transitioning our counter services to virtual services, conducting virtual outreach, and mobile inspections where possible. We continued necessary field inspections while taking the required pandemic preventative measures. From March 2020 to January 21, in addition to our normal duties, DEHQ's food program shifted operations to investigate the cases of food handlers with COVID and to conduct COVID outbreak investigations in restaurants. The food program also conducted over 20,000 field investigations at restaurants and food facilities, 1,000 complaint investigations, 70 food recall notifications, and 880 illness investigations. To assist operators in navigating the state's COVID industry requirements, DEHQ created 14 new informational documents with 2 translated into Spanish and 6 translated into multiple languages, and we sent over 82 GovDelivery email messages to quickly provide information on the changing regulations to our industry and to their member organizations. We also use social media to share links to the county's COVID-19 media updates. Staff are actively working to conduct community needs assessments to improve service and access to the preferred languages spoken at food facilities and relate to environmental justice concerns concerning Coupa and CalArt facilities that handle, manufacture, or store specific hazardous materials that pose the greatest risk to immediate harm and the public and environment if there are chemical releases. DEHQ's fee ordinances require 2 hearings. Today's recommendations address a CEQA exemption, hearing procedures, a request for direction on the options presented for the Small Drinking Water Systems Program, a waiver of Board Policy B29, and approve the introduction of the ordinance selected by the board. Adoption of the ordinance would take place after the 2nd reading on May 5th, and the proposed fees would be effective on July 1st, 2021. If there are no fee increases, DEHQ needs to request alternative funding in the amount of $648,103 in addition to the $1.1 million in reserve funds the department planned to use. There are numerous programs and fee categories that have been proposed to increase in DEHQ. We highlighted a few on the slide, and we have additional information should the board need specifics. If there are no fee increases and no alternative funding, DEHQ would not be able to fill vacancies, which will reduce the staffing level. This will cause operational impacts, including potentially not meeting state mandates, delayed service delivery, reduced regulatory compliance, and potentially shifting certain activities from inspection-based to complaint-only response. This concludes our presentation, and staff are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just a couple quick comments, and I'll go to Supervisor Desmond. I see he has his hand up. I think it would be, my suggestion on this item, but want to hear from everyone else, would be that we not increase the fees. I don't think we need to increase fees, DEH fees. These do hit a lot of the industries that have been hardest hit. And so I would suggest that we don't, we charge the fees, but we don't do the increase component for this year. And direct staff to provide alternate funding. I think it's about $648,000. And alternate funding, I think it was, we have some space in our framework around our ARPA funds for businesses that we could easily incorporate that into. And so I would replace recommendation 1 with the recommendation to not adopt the proposed fees, direct staff to return with alternate funding options such as federal or state stimulus funds, and or if not available, then general fund balance. I also think on the water program, the small water program, it would be appropriate to adopt option 3. So this would be recommendation 3, option 3. Return this to the state. They have more staff. They have greater economies of scale. They can provide a better service to folks. And it seems like a fairly easy one. So just for discussion purposes, I'll put a motion on the table to go in that direction. But let's hear from everyone else. Supervisor Desmond?
very much, Chair Fletcher. Yeah, well, I agree with you on both of these items. I did want to ask if we could, and thanks for a great presentation. I learned more about DEHQ than I ever knew before. So thank you so much for that and what you've done and accomplished. On the fees, there was a slide you had up that I didn't quite catch on the fees that we're charging restaurants. I think the table that you bring that back up again.
Supervisor Desmond, we're pulling that slide up.
All right. So this is I just want to be the fee category for I see the different size restaurants, the different fees, and the proposals and things like that. Are these fees for annual inspections? I guess I'm just trying to figure out what these fees are made up of.
Through the chair, Supervisor Desmond, these are annual permit fees for our restaurants and food facilities. They do include an inspection component, but they also include funding for the entire retail food safety program, which includes inspections, it includes complaint response, foodborne illness investigation, recall notification, duty desk for answering operator questions. It's a variety of activities for the program that these annual fees fund.
Okay, all right, well that's, I appreciate that. You've got, I see restaurants 11 to 25. Is there restaurants that have more employees or there fees for that, or does it just go up to 25 employees? I just noticed there's no beyond 25 employees.
Yes, Supervisor Desmond, this is a sample of a few of the fees that we have. We do have a full list. For our restaurant categories, we have the categories of restaurants 1 to 10, restaurants 11 to 25, and then 25 plus. We also have additional food facility permits for smaller markets or prepackaged type of operations.
So this is the total fee, including all the programs, inspections, and everything else. Okay, that was, I wanted to get clarified. Thank you. And then I have a question on I agree that given the option with the small water systems of returning it to the state, I'm just, and it appeared by the table that you put up there that the state does pretty much the same things that we do as far as ensuring water quality and things like that. Is your confidence level up? My concern is that most of these are in the unincorporated areas or small systems. I guess as far as, is the state going to do them well, or are we kind of leaving them in the wind with the state? I just want to make sure that they have quality water, that they're not going to be kind of left in the lurch without a local, I guess, a county participation in the program. I'm just curious what the confidence level is of how they will be ensure that they've got the water they need.
Through the chair, Supervisor Desmond, yes, we are confident. We have been in discussions with the state staff. They do have a local San Diego office, so there is accessibility there. They implement the same state requirements and regulations and testing criteria. We do want to minimize any sort of impact to our local operators, which is why we're proposing a one-year transition so that the state can ensure that they have the staffing levels necessary.
Well, thank you. And then with that, I'll second the motion. Thank you very much for the answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Any other comments from other colleagues? All right, so we have a motion by myself, seconded by Supervisor Desmond, to replace recommendation 1 with direction to staff to not adopt the proposed fee increases, direct staff to return with alternate funding source options, including federal and or state stimulus funds to bridge the delta in increase, to adopt recommendation 2 as written, and on recommendation 3 to provide direction to follow option 3 in returning this program to the state. With that, we have a motion and a second. See no questions from my colleagues. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Chair Fletcher, The one thing that we would like to request in light of the action taken by the board for purposes of not moving forward with the fee increases, we will need to bring those ordinances back to the board with the changes reflected. So we would request to continue that item until May 5th to bring the updated ordinances as well. We just wanted to provide that information to you. We can take the direction to not increase the fees, certainly take the direction to provide the small water systems back to the state. It's just the formality of the corrections that we need to make for the ordinances.
Yeah, no, sir, thank you for that. So on the recommendation 2, will we have the hearing on May 5th, or we'll come back and get this and then we'll have to do the hearing after May 5th?
Yes, Chair Fletcher, that is correct. We would want to set a hearing for May 5th, and then we would come back for second reading on May 19th.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you for clarifying that.
With that, Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond? Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, we're going to move. We just have 2 items left. I think it should be reasonably quick. Let's go to agenda item 4, hearing approval of cost recovery. We're going to talk about some hemp. Let me turn it over to staff for a presentation, and then I confirm with the clerk we do not have any requests to speak on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and board members. I'm Ha Dang, Director of the Department of Agriculture Weights and Measures, or AWM. This is a request for board's approval of AWM's cost recovery proposal for fiscal year 2021-22. AWM supports a diverse agricultural community, human health and safety, consumer confidence, and a sustainable environment region-wide by implementing about 30 regulatory programs. We are committed to provide quality services in a cost-effective manner. This proposal is related to the programs listed on the slide. Board approval will ensure that AWM will be able to fulfill state mandates and provide the level of service expected by stakeholders. Now, I turn this over to Megan Moore, Assistant Director.
The main reason for this proposal is AWM's compliance with Board Policy B29 that directs departments to recover the full cost of services provided to agencies and individuals. Costs for salaries, benefits, facilities, services, supplies continue to rise. The county's labor contract is a key cost driver with the increase of about $1.8 million or 8.5% over 2 fiscal years. In addition, AWM is required to implement state regulatory changes that impact operating costs. AWM also did not move forward with cost recovery last year because of the pandemic effects. This slide depicts the fee development process that is consistent across the county's enterprise. We conducted a comprehensive review since our last fee package that took effect on July 1st, 2019. We used time studies and applied available funding for the agricultural programs and savings from operational efficiencies to mitigate the cost increases. Then we calculated the fee adjustments, which are verified by the county auditor and controller. We reviewed all 77 fees. 54 have no changes, 23 are adjusted, and a new license fee is proposed for the industrial hemp cultivation program. Due to efficiencies, there is no proposed change to the hazardous materials inventory fees. In fiscal year 1920, the actual cost for all agricultural programs was about $18.4 million. Of this amount, the county provides about $4.9 million, or 27%. The state and federal government provides $12.3 million, or 66%, for a total of 93%. The ag industry contributed about $1.2 million, or 7%, of which $643,000, or 3.5%, was paid by local growers, and the remaining amount paid by out-of-county agricultural operators. AWM continues to leverage technology and streamline processes to contain cost. The total savings of $188,000 are passed on to our customers. Without innovation, fees would increase on average an additional 4.2%. This slide shows the proposed fee increases for the export and direct marketing programs. Export certification prevents the movement of damaging invasive pests by certifying plant shipments for export, a service that is vital for our agricultural sector access markets in other areas. Direct marketing supports farmers' ability to provide access to locally grown produce while promoting economic opportunities for farmers selling there. For each program, we propose an increase from $2 to $5 per certificate type. In addition to fee revenue, these programs are supported by county and state funding of $558,000. For state export certification, we selected 8 counties for benchmarking comparison based on the total number of certificates issued annually. The graph reflects the cost of researching, inspecting, and issuing the certificate for an agricultural shipment at the customer's business location. The yellow bar shows our current fee of $41, and the blue bar shows our proposed fee of $43. Both are below the median of $60. Next, I will present on the industrial hemp cultivation program. This program regulates the production of a unique agricultural commodity with numerous potential markets for food, fiber, health, and wellness. Hemp and cannabis are physically indistinguishable. Hemp may have no more than 0.3% THC, or it is considered cannabis. The 2018 Farm Bill legalized only hemp. In 2019, the state created a framework to regulate industry, protect the public and natural resources, and mandated that AWM regulate cultivation region-wide. This program continues to evolve, and state regulations will change in fiscal year 21-22. The following factors drive this program's costs. Due to its nexus with cannabis, industrial hemp is highly regulated, requiring growers to report and AWM to approve each step during the cultivation process, from seed to harvest, to ensure only hemp gets to market. Since 2019, there have been 8 major regulatory changes that require more resources to implement procedural changes compared to an established program. Despite the state's $900 registration fee, they are projecting a revenue shortfall and no longer reimburse counties for industry outreach and staff training. These are the reasons for today's proposed fees. The proposed hourly rate increase is $10 with an offset of $8,600 split equally between state and existing county funding. This represents an annual increase of $5 or 4% since fiscal year 1920. This rate is used when staff provide services such as sample collection, inspection, and investigation to individual growers. While the hourly rate covers the cost of services provided to individual growers as shown in the green, there are still remaining costs associated with other program services, which include outreach, enforcement, and complaint response that benefit all growers and are shown in the blue. As a result, AWM proposes a new annual license fee. For board consideration, AWM proposes 2 options. Option 1, a license fee of $1,502 at full cost recovery for an additional revenue of $111,000. Option 2 is the staff recommended license fee of $200 with an offset of $96,000 split equally between state and existing county funding. This option takes into consideration the evolving and complex regulatory nature of this emerging industry. Next, I will present on price verification. The price verification program helps ensure consumer confidence and fair market competition by making sure that customers are paying the lowest advertised price at the cash register. Businesses fall into one of 3 tiers based on the number of registers. Tier 1 is 67% of all regulated businesses and is shown in this slide with a proposed increase of $6 or 4%. For all tiers, the increase is 4%. For Tier 1 benchmarking comparison, we selected 6 counties. Our current fee is in yellow and proposed fee in blue are below the median of $155. AWM held 5 workshops in March for affected customers. Workshop notices that included language access options and details of the fee proposal were posted on AWM's website and sent by email and postmail. The agricultural stakeholders indicated an understanding of the need for the cost recovery proposal and expressed concerns regarding the current economic conditions and challenges due to the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. No concerns were raised by the price verification and weights and measures devices stakeholders. In 2020, the board approved fee payment deferral through March 31st of about $3.4 million for AWM's direct marketing, export certification, hazardous materials inventory, price verification, and weights and measures devices programs. The actual deferred amount is $1.2 million. AWM has yet to recover $470,000 as of April 2nd, 2021. The deferred fees are not part of this fee proposal. AWM also worked closely to continue serving businesses and the public by expanding online payment, transitioning counter service to virtual, conducting virtual outreach and video inspections. We also conducted necessary field inspections while taking the required pandemic prevention measures. In the 13 months period from March 2020, AWM conducted 380,000 agricultural inspections and 6,100 price verification and weights and measures devices inspections. AWM partnered with the state to distribute PPE and sanitizing supplies at no cost to local agricultural operations to support the health and safety of essential workers. About 558,000 face masks, 104,000 safety gloves, and 1,800 hand sanitizer bottles were distributed to 21,000 agricultural workers. AWM assisted CAL FIRE and County Public Health with the vaccination of agricultural workers. And AWM is working to conduct community needs assessments to improve service access related to food security and enhanced regulatory compliance assistance related to underserved businesses. AWM fee ordinance requires 2 hearings. Today's recommendations address hearing procedures, CEQA exemption, option 1 or 2 for the industrial hemp license fee, and waiver of board policy B29. The second hearing will be the adoption of the ordinance after the second reading on May 5th. If there is no fee increase, AWM needs to request alternative funding in the amount of $104,914. Of that, $73,198 for agricultural programs with option 2 for the industrial hemp cultivation license fee, and $31,716 for the price verification and weights and measures devices. If there is no fee increase, no alternative funding, AWM will not fill vacancies, which will reduce staffing levels. This will cause operational impacts, including not meeting state mandates, delayed service delivery, and reduced regulatory compliance. This fee proposal also represents AWM's commitment to review cost annually and provide stakeholders an opportunity to regularly plan for fee adjustments. Not moving forward with this package will represent 3 years of no increases. This concludes our presentation, and staff is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Seems like on the new fee that we're doing, it seems like it would make sense to go with the lower amount, the new license fee of about $200. I think we can assess as we move forward. $1,500 seems a little steep for a new fee. And once it gets stood up and gets moving, I think we may be able to reassess as we move forward. But I would just put out a recommendation to basically adopt the 5 recommendations outlined in this board letter, utilizing option 2 on recommendation 3. So I'll just put a motion for discussion purposes on this item, and then go to my colleagues to see if they have any comments, questions. Supervisor Anderson?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Any other comments or questions from others? All right, we have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Anderson to adopt the 5 recommendations in agenda item number 4, utilizing option 2 on recommendation 3. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, we're going to go to our final agenda item of the day, agenda item 10, notice public hearing amendments to the San Diego County Regulatory Code related to the management of solid waste, recycled materials, and organic waste. I would ask the public speakers on this item, if you would wish to comment, to please call in at this time. We'll first hear a staff presentation, then we will go to our public speakers and return to board deliberation. So while our staff gets reset, we will give them a second, and then we will go ahead and turn it over to them for their presentation.
While the staff is getting settled, we did have 4 requests to speak on this item. As the chair mentioned, those individuals that requested to speak on item 10, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. You will be muted until it's your turn to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Rich Whipple, Deputy Director of Public Works. With me today is Michael Wansidler, Recycling Program Manager. The Board of Supervisors adopted the Strategic Plan to Reduce Waste, or Strategic Plan, in 2017. The plan was adopted to reduce the county's greenhouse gas emissions, make the best use of natural resources, and reduce the need for new landfills. The strategic plan included a goal to reach 75% waste diversion in the unincorporated county by 2025. The goal was subsequently extended to 80% waste diversion by 2030. Achieving this goal would result in annually reducing the equivalent emissions from consuming nearly 9 million gallons of gasoline. One of the priority initiatives to achieve the diversion goal in the plan was to update our franchise waste hauler agreement and solid waste ordinance to incorporate new diversion programs in the state's new diversion requirements. Proposed revisions will target recyclable and organic materials. Organic materials are particularly important as they represent more than 1/3 of all materials landfilled from the unincorporated county, are the largest generator of methane in landfills, and are the focus of new state regulations intended to achieve a 75% statewide organics diversion goal by 2025. To get an idea of their annual volume, if organic materials were deposited at the former SDCCU stadium, it would fill the stadium and spill into the parking lot. The unincorporated county is currently achieving a 60% state-calculated landfill diversion rate. To work toward our diversion goal, the Construction and Demolition, or C&D program, was updated in 2020 and is anticipated to increase diversion to 64%. The proposed ordinance and franchise hauler agreement revisions are expected to increase diversion to 73%. Proposed zoning ordinance amendments related to organic materials management and expanded education and technical assistance programs are expected to further drive diversion to meet the goal. I'll now cover the proposed solid waste ordinance amendments. Though these provisions would only apply to the unincorporated county, other local jurisdictions will also need to update their ordinances to align with the new state requirements by January 1st, 2022. The recycling requirements in the ordinance apply to the materials listed here, referred to as designated recyclable and organic materials. Each resident and business must separate these materials and arrange for recycling, subject to the exceptions I'll address later. The top row identifies the materials that are currently required to be recycled. The bottom row lists proposed expansions to include green materials, wood, lumber, and food waste as required by State Law SB 1383 and would become effective October 1st. The proposed ordinance incorporates the state's mandatory requirements for generators to separate organics from waste. Multifamily and commercial generators must achieve minimum recycling and organics diversion service levels, which I'll cover later. These changes will support the expanded recycling and organics collection programs that franchise holders will be required to implement. There are some exceptions through a waiver process and for those located in sparsely populated areas. Geography plays a big role in explaining which residents and businesses must comply. This slide shows the requirements for densely and sparsely populated areas. As provided in state law, less organic recycling requirements apply to residents and businesses in sparsely populated areas. This slide provides a map highlighting the unincorporated county population areas in blue and green. As defined by the state, sparsely populated areas, shown in green, include census tracts with less than 75 persons per square mile. To increase diversion in the multifamily and commercial sectors, these generators must achieve a minimum recycling and organics diversion service level ratio of 35%. Additionally, multifamily complexes will be required to implement at minimum of 20 gallons of recycling and 5 gallons of organics weekly service for each unit. Recycling and organics waste collection services would be required for applicable generators, regardless of the hauler they use. However, waivers would be available for those meeting certain criteria. State law provides three waiver types for recycling and organic waste services, which have been incorporated into the proposed amendment. Additionally, the county proposes to offer waivers for those that manage organic materials on site or self-haul their materials. SB 1383 sets a goal to recover 20% of currently disposed edible food for human consumption. To achieve this goal, commercial edible food generators will be required to implement edible food recovery programs. Large generators in Tier 1 must begin by January 2022, and smaller generators in Tier 2 must begin by 2024. Tier 1 and 2 businesses will be required to recover edible food that would otherwise be disposed, either by contracting with or self-hauling to food recovery organizations or services. They must also keep records of their donations. In addition to helping feed hungry people, these businesses can receive tax deductions while reducing their waste bills. Food recovery organizations and services must also keep records on donations from Tier 1 and 2 businesses and report these to the county annually. County staff have been actively encouraging food donation through collaborations with Luja's Food System Initiative to implement the Food Donation Action Plan, with the San Diego Food System Alliance to promote food recovery, and with local jurisdictions to plan for the expanded food recovery capacity needs. The proposed ordinance revisions address the new franchise agreement and the hauler types, which I'll discuss later. Additionally, the board approved changes to the construction demolition program in 2020, which included requirements for C&D haulers. A new category for haulers, the Certified Recyclable Material Collectors, or CRMC, is also established and modeled after the City of San Diego's CRMC program. These collectors will not be permitted to collect solid waste, but will be able to collect up to 1,000 tons per year of recyclable and organic materials, providing more choices for customers and a pathway for small but innovative haulers. There are prescribed state enforcement processes that jurisdictions are required to adopt an ordinance. Implementation must begin no later than January 2022 with education of non-compliant entities and issuance of notice of violations and penalties beginning in January 2024. County staff, in collaboration with haulers, will conduct educational and outreach by mail in multiple languages and in person to help businesses and residents comply. These include violations for not separating recyclable materials from waste, contaminating bins, edible food generators not participating in a food donation program, among others. Enforcement would begin with notification and education. However, continued violations would result in financial penalties with amounts and timelines prescribed by the state. In summary, this slide provides a comparison between the current and proposed ordinance broken down by key elements, showing how the proposed changes are needed to comply with state law and increase overall unincorporated area diversion. As previously discussed, food scraps and lumber standards would be added, minimum service level ratios established for generators, edible food recovery standards added, corrective action plans established for hauler accountability, and state enforcement standards would be adopted. I'll now cover the proposed franchise agreement changes. The current franchise agreement is proposed to be replaced with a new agreement, which creates new hauler categories, expands recycling and organics collection requirements, requires educational materials to be provided in multiple languages, sets diversion goals, and more. These changes are being made to support generator and county compliance with state regulations and the county's achievement of its diversion goals. In this transition, all haulers with an existing agreement will be granted a new agreement, and the county will require all non-franchised C&D haulers to obtain an agreement. The current agreement includes only a few performance standards, does not include liquidated damages, and offers the county few options other than to resort to suspension or revocation of the agreement. When parties agree to liquidated damages, they agree to the amount to be paid in the event of a particular violation. The proposed agreement establishes a specified amount of liquidated damages intended to compensate the county for costs incurred as a result of a hauler's failure to implement required programs, such as education and outreach. Going forward, the inclusion and achievement of expanded performance standards will be critical to comply with SB 1383 and achieve the county's diversion goals. The list identifies some of the key programs and services for which liquidated damages are identified and are modeled after other franchise agreements throughout the state. The strategic plan considered the potential to assess liquidated damages on haulers based on attainment of diversion targets. For each ton of waste sent to the landfill over the diversion target, haulers would be assessed damages. Due to changes in market conditions and new SB 1383 requirements, the basis for liquidated damages were shifted through a negotiated process with hauler stakeholders to fulfillment of programmatic requirements and diversion goals. This ensures that haulers are responsible for meeting requirements that are under their control while still providing the county an option for assessing damages for noncompliance. Incorporating diversion goals in the proposed agreement will help the county achieve its diversion goals. For the residential and commercial haulers, the requirements kick in 2022 with a goal of 38% and ramp up to 54% in 2025. For C&D haulers, the requirements align with CalGreen's 65% recycling requirement for C&D projects, but would increase to 75% if prescribed by CalGreen or a C&D facility in the county achieves this level. Compliance is measured based on the actual annual diversion level. A corrective action plan process is defined for a hauler's failure to meet diversion goals with the ability to assess liquidated damages if the plan is not fully implemented. With franchise haulers' attainment of these goals and the implementation of the other strategic plan programs, such as the expanded C&D program and changes to the solid waste and zoning ordinances, we anticipate achieving our diversion goals. There are additional sustainability features, including a requirement to use alternative fuel vehicles by July 1st, 2029. Diesel or gasoline fuels would not be allowed, but a variety of other fuels such as compressed, liquefied, or renewable natural gas, electricity, fuel cells, or other advanced technologies would be allowed. Haulers' use of renewable natural gas, a fuel derived from organic waste, would also support the county's compliance with SB 1383's requirement to purchase recovered organic products. An additional feature of the agreement is that green waste would be prohibited for use as landfill cover. In summary, this slide presents a comparison between the current and proposed agreement broken down by key elements, showing how the proposed changes are needed to comply with state law and increase overall unincorporated area diversion. As previously discussed, food scraps would be added, food scrap collection would be added, hauler diversion goals established, expanded hauler processing requirements and contamination monitoring added, corrective action plans and liquidated damages established for hauler accountability, and alternative fuel standards added. For the current and future agreements, the contract length and annual renewal provisions remain the same. As a result, the rolling 10-year term will continue. The proposed agreement provides the county and haulers with an opportunity to meet and confer to discuss additional revisions on an annual basis. If revisions cannot be successfully negotiated, there are some options. The agreement requires compliance with applicable law, so the board could also enact ordinances to require changes that fall within the initial scope of the agreement. Alternatively, the agreement can be terminated upon 10 years' notice. This slide provides a comparison of key provisions in our proposed agreement to other local jurisdictions. For their agreement type, the county and city of San Diego use a non-exclusive system, though the city also provides municipal residential collection. The cities of Chula Vista and Oceanside use an exclusive system. For the contract term, the county's proposed term is 10 years with an annual renewal. The City of San Diego uses a 7-year term, and the cities of Chula Vista and Oceanside use similar periods with some options. For expanded services to drive greater diversion, the county includes more programmatic requirements than other jurisdictions. One example is targeted inspections and technical assistance to commercial and multifamily generators whose service level ratio is below 35%. For contamination monitoring, the state requires jurisdictions to conduct monitoring but does not set a level. The county proposes requiring 20% of customers to be monitored annually, significantly higher than the level in other jurisdictions. And lastly, diversion goals. The county's proposed diversion goals phase in at 54%, which is higher than other jurisdictions' goals capped at 50%. Outreach to stakeholders was a critical component to formation of the proposed amendments. Starting in May 2018, the county conducted 7 stakeholder workshops to provide a forum for input. Throughout this process, 27 organizations participated. Today's proposed solid waste ordinance amendment and franchise agreement will enable the county to achieve its diversion goals and aligns with the county's Sustainable Environment Strategic Initiative. This concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you for the great presentation. And I know a tremendous amount of work has gone into this to get us to this point, and appreciate staff's work and everyone's engagement. Let me ask the clerk to call forward our public speakers, and then we will come back to the board.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 5 requests to speak on this item. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I would remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Aaron, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 8569. 8569.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Good morning, or actually good afternoon, Chair Fletcher, members of the board. My name is Frank Landis, and on this matter, I'm going to speak for my family, not the California Native Plant Society. I agree that the county has to meet state guidelines to increase recycling, and I completely agree that we need to eliminate methane emissions as rapidly as possible. Excuse me. That said, the devil is in the details, so I have 2 items I strongly urge you to include in this bill or in the second reading of it. First is to expand methane emissions testing to include recycling facilities. This is simply because we need to get emissions down. It turns out a number of things from landfills to leaky pipes emit methane, and they all need to be regularly monitored. So does organic waste recycling. The second issue comes from my mother, who has served on the Los Angeles County Integrated Waste Management Task Force for over 2 decades. They're dealing with this problem in the LA County, the problem I'm about to describe, and we need to deal with it here. The problem is cross-contamination. Even if we don't recycle organic medical waste, there's still lots of bacteria, pathogens, and even pests that can spread through compost and especially mulch. If we get careless about the collected organic waste, processing them in a few large centers, and then spreading the resulting mulch and compost throughout the county, these operations become ongoing super spreader systems that contaminate compost and mulch throughout the county. The results could nuke San Diego's agricultural sector, whether it's by getting E. coli into salad greens, spreading citrus-killing viruses, or driving up pest control costs by spreading pests that survive hot composting. The California Department of Food and Agriculture has good systems for safeguarding compost and mulch, and my mom's task force has been pushing for the state to expand that system to cover CalRecycle's new initiative. For whatever reason, CalRecycle has ignored the suggestion, even though they're aware of the problem, and there's even been suggested legislation to ask the California Department of Toxic Substances Control to stand up a program identical to what CDFW has been doing for years, if not decades. So what I'd ask is to join in LA's efforts and to try to get CDFA to expand its compost and mulch certification, as well as organic recycling, as organic waste recycling expands, so that San Diego's agriculture is protected. I'm happy to help with this more offline, and thank you very much for taking my comments.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9885. 9885. (9885), please press *6 to unmute yourself. And if you don't respond when your number is called, we will come back to you. Our next call, here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning. I apologize. My name's Lori Saldana. I'm a longtime resident and gardener in San Diego. And I just wanted to emphasize that the agricultural value in San Diego County is the second highest in the state of California. We have the most small organic farmers in the entire United States operating here in San Diego County. And as the previous caller commented, making sure that we have a safe method of processing this waste is essential to protect the integrity of these organic farmers who may choose to use some of the compost and mulch that's generated from this new county program. And to that end, I think it's essential that households be educated on what can be safely added to these waste bins. And so I hope that will be part of the funding for this program, is to hold educational or develop educational materials to be sent to people, and even to conduct some online forums so people understand what can and cannot be put into these bins that are going to be used as part of this new collection process. And finally, I wanted to suggest that the county look at partnering with community gardens, because there are many of these gardens where people want to grow their own food, but they don't have access, they don't have space, and they might be a good place on a smaller micro level to collect some of this organic waste and process it as part of a community garden program, and save on some of the waste hauling charges if you can develop collection locations where people can literally drop off materials. Also, businesses that generate a large amount of organic waste, like coffee shops, can be encouraged to make that available for people and keep coffee grounds and other organic waste out of the waste stream by delivering it directly to many of the urban gardeners that we have here in San Diego County. So I hope those are helpful recommendations, and I look forward to this program as it develops. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6556. 6556.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Chair Fletcher and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Jim Madaffer, and I'm speaking this morning as Executive Director of the San Diego County Disposal Association. And we're asking for your support for this non-exclusive franchise agreement and the related amendments to the solid waste ordinance. Our members collect about 97% of the solid waste generated in the unincorporated area under solid waste management agreements with the county. The proposed franchise agreements before you provide a balanced set of tools and incentives for haulers to contribute to the county's ambitious goals to divert waste from landfills and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. These agreements hold haulers accountable for implementing numerous new programs and meeting rigorous new standards that are designed to increase diversion. And I know we're all working toward the same goals, and our commitment to achieving those goals is reflected in the millions of dollars our members have already invested in alternative fuel vehicles, new infrastructure, and operational changes. These investments will continue and accelerate under the new conditions of the franchise agreements before you today. I want to especially thank county staff who have participated in so many of the meetings, phone calls, and written exchanges over the last 2 years. This has truly been a collaborative process of public engagement, and the result now is a franchise agreement that is really much more modernized and one we can agree is more fair and far more effective. With the implementation of the new organics collection under SB 1383, along with the county's new policies on construction and demolition debris, and now these new standards under the proposed franchise agreements, the county can feel confident that we can and we will achieve ambitious reductions in both greenhouse gas emissions and increased diversion of waste from the landfills. We appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective, and we look forward to continue working closely with county staff as we work to implement and refine these new strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4803. 4803.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Swanborn. I work for HF&H Consultants, and I've had the pleasure of working with the County Public Works team in the development of the modifications to the county code and the non-exclusive franchise agreement that are in front of the board this afternoon for consideration. I certainly support this. I'm really here today just to be available in the event staff wants me to respond to any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item. Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you again for all the stakeholders that have been involved in this process and our county staff. I think we've arrived at a pretty good place on this item. To start the discussion, I'm happy to make a motion to adopt the recommendations outlined in agenda item 10. Let me go to my colleague if there's any comments.
I'll second your motion. I also want to make a comment. This is really important because clearly a massive amount of our carbon emissions come from methane, from our landfills. And there's also so many opportunities to divert solid waste in order to support our agricultural community here. In my district in Escondido, there's a really vibrant agricultural community, and across our county, there's a lot of opportunities to, instead of sending waste to the landfill that fills up our landfills and emits methane and really contributes to our carbon footprint, to instead divert that waste to compost to support a more sustainable local agricultural community. So I think this is a step in the right direction. It's something I think is really important. I'm going to be working on this more as we move forward on how we can really transform the way that we engage with and deal with waste in our region to get towards a much more sustainable regional footprint on waste. So it's such an important issue, and thank you very much for county work on bringing this forward, and happy to second Chair Fletcher's motion.
All right, we have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Lawson Reamer. Let me see if we have any other comments from my colleagues. All right, not seeing any. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson Reamer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
The motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Concludes the business on our agenda. We have two quick adjourn memories. I'd like to begin by adjourning our Board of Supervisors meeting in honor of the life of Bishop George Dallas McKinney. Bishop McKinney founded St. Stephen's Cathedral Church of God in Christ in the 1960s. Over the years, he not only grew the size of his congregation, but he transformed it into a pillar of the Valencia Park neighborhood. Bishop McKinney's passion for helping people extended well beyond the walls of his church and reached deep into the heart of the San Diego community. I had the great honor of knowing Bishop McKinney, of having the opportunity to spend a considerable amount of time with him. We shared a commonality of an upbringing in Arkansas, and I found him a great source of wisdom and inspiration, and really a true icon and member of our community. Before he started St. Stephen's here in San Diego, he worked as a chaplain at a state mental hospital in Toledo, Ohio. And mental health awareness continued to be a primary focus of his ministry when he came here to San Diego. They also provide counseling and crisis intervention. As his church grew in its presence, so did the services they provided for the community. Not just the mental health services they provided, but also the educational services they provided with the kindergarten through 12th grade school. His church also provided emergency shelter referrals, food, helping young folks with job training. Outside of his church duties, Bishop McKinney continued to lead the way fighting for racial and economic justice. In addition to his work here in San Diego as bishop, he oversaw about 40 Church of God in Christ congregations throughout Southern California, along with sitting on the national board. And so on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, we adjourn today's meeting in memory of Bishop McKinney's honor. We send our deepest thoughts to Bishop McKinney's wife, Barbara, his sons, his 15 grandchildren, and his 5 great-grandchildren. He left a tremendous legacy here in San Diego and will be deeply missed. Today, I'd also like to adjourn our Board of Supervisors meeting in honor of the life of Santiago de los Santos. He was a longtime reservation foreman and community member of the Manzanita tribal community. Was the husband of Chairwoman Angela Elliott Santos of the Manzanita Band of the Kumeyaay Nation. Our thoughts go out to their family. Santiago served as a close advisor to former Chair Leroy J. Elliott. It's described as a wonderful man who helped all in need, regardless of their circumstances. He served his community. He served as a firefighter, as a tribal police officer, was an equipment operator, was also an avid horseman. He did everything he could to preserve and continue the Kumeyaay culture and traditions as taught by the elders. And on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, we adjourn today's meeting in memory and in honor of Santiago de los Santos' legacy, and we send our greatest condolences and thoughts to his family and the Kumeyaay Nation. With that, we will adjourn into closed session. Closed session will start at 1 p.m. So board members will reconvene in closed session at 1 p.m. And thank everyone for their time and attention.
The board will recess into closed session at 1 p.m. to consider those matters listed under item 33 on yesterday's agenda, as well as item 1 on the County of San Diego Flood Control District agenda and item 1 on the In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority agenda. If there are any reportable actions, they will be reported out after the conclusion of closed session today. The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, May 4th, 2021 at 9 a.m.